After I spent $8,600 on a trip for my family, they used my card to sneak brother's girlfriend into my hotel suite. So I left them stranded in Japan. That night, I canceled the entire vacation, including flights and hotels. When they returned, the locks had been changed, the rent had been quadrupled, and the coffee shop had denied their credit cards. That was only the beginning. I stared at the message on my phone, the blinking dots mocking me, as if more evil was waiting below. It was from my mother, simple and nonchalant, like if she hadn't just thrown 3 months of planning and $8,600 of my money away. We assigned your seat to Hank's girlfriend. She's more entertaining. No apologies. There's no explanation. A smirking smack in digital ink. My response was just as brief. Got it. And then I did something no one expected. I canceled the entire trip, including flights and hotel reservations. Non-refundable. Didn't care. I booked it, I'd kill it. And that night, I changed the locks on the family dwelling. It was in my name regardless. They had been living there rent-free for the last 5 years, laughing behind my back. It was finally my turn to chuckle. But first, a little recap. Let me explain how I came to the point where I could ruin a family vacation, triple my parents' rent, and cut off my golden boy brother like a malignancy that should have been excised years ago. It all started with one stupid idea. Be a good son. My father was turning 60, a significant milestone, and I thought, what better way to celebrate than a family trip to Japan? He had always wanted to see Kyoto's cherry blossoms before his legs gave out, and my mother liked sushi like it was religion. Hank, my younger brother, expressed a desire to eat authentic ramen, rather than the cheap college kind. So I did something that everyone suggested I shouldn't. I paid $8,000 for 100 flights, motels, bullet train passes, and restaurant reservations. I planned the trip around my job deadlines, spent weekends calculating hotel closeness to shrines and stores, and compared ticket pricing. I even upgraded their flights to premium economy. I didn't care about luxury for myself. I purchased a cheap seat and a little room in Osaka because I imagined this was what love looked like. But Hank constantly finds a way to remind me of my place in the family. Not my favorite. Not an enjoyable one. Only the guy who pays. So, when I read the text, we gave your spot to Hank's girlfriend. I wasn't surprised that she's more fun. It was evident. And clarity is dangerous in the hands of someone who has been abused for too long. They always assumed I'd be quiet, until I didn't. It began with guilt. That is how they hook you. Not in love, not even under obligation. It's just guilt. My parents had never asked me to pay for anything directly. No. They favored subtle techniques. Hank is doing his best, but it is quite difficult for young people these days. You're fortunate to have a stable employment. Not everyone can say that. Your father and I are proud of you, as you are aware. We only wish Hank had your drive. Initially I paid because I wanted to. Hank was my younger brother. I figured that helping him finish college was the appropriate thing to do. I paid for his tuition, books, and even purchased him a laptop after his previous one inexplicably broke 2 weeks before exams. However, help quickly became an expectation. 3 months after graduating, he had yet to apply for a job. He said he was still sorting things out after spending the entire day playing FIFA on the couch. I'd return home from a 12-hour shift to find him eating takeout and resting his feet on my coffee table. I paid for the food. In the house that I owned. And Mom would reply, "He just needs some time. Don't put pressure on him." Dad didn't even look up from his iPad. "Let the boy breathe," he'd say, as if I were the problem. It grew worse when Hank got a girlfriend named Madison. She insisted that I name her Mads. Moved in 2 months after they began dating. There is no rent, of course. There is no discussion. There was a sudden appearance. She took over my kitchen, Netflix and Wi-Fi. One time I caught her trying on my dress shoes for a TikTok video. "I'm portraying a role," she remarked with a wink. "Do not be odd." Hank laughed. "Dude, chill. She's funny." Funny. That word would haunt me. Still, I remained mute. I kept paying. Because of family. What would Dad say if we fought? Because you earn more than enough. When Hank lost the job I helped him get, showing up late 3 times in his first week, I covered his car payments to keep his credit from deteriorating. Madison totaled her old automobile, so I co-signed for a used Mazda. In my name. I realized this is stupid, and I didn't blink when they said that they wanted to join Dad on his birthday trip. I modified the plans, We've added extra rooms, rebooked hotels. I even changed my own PTO schedule to make it happen. And what did I receive in return? We assigned your seat to Hank's girlfriend. She's more entertaining. That wasn't simply an insult. It was a revelation. Because that one sentence verified what I'd always suspected. I wasn't fun, liked, or respected by my family. I was useful. A wallet with a heart. And the worst part? I would let it happen. But they weren't finished. Not even close. The morning after they arrived in Tokyo, Hank texted me. Yo, can you wire us some spending money? Mads forgot her card, and Dad says the conversion rates are terrible. I didn't respond. An hour later, another one. Don't be salty, man. This is meant to be about Dad, and not you. I almost flung my phone across the room. They had stolen my position, vacation and moment. But they still wanted more. But I remained quiet. Allow them to enjoy it. Allow them to publish their filtered reels of family love while I sat at home in a now empty house with a wrath I couldn't describe. Until day 5 of their journey. That's when the hotel called me. Mr. Adams, we're contacting you because the credit card on file for the group reservation has been refused, and there is an error with the guest list. A non-authorized individual has been added to the suite. Ah. So that's how they got it done. They had changed me out for Madison without informing the hotel. I used my card to pay for her place. I thought I would never notice. That was the moment. Not an insult. Not the money. Not even being excluded from my father's 60th birthday trip. The expectation was that I would accept it. That I would always accept it. So I entered my bank account, highlighted the charges, and canceled the card. I then contacted the motel back. Remove all guests. The reservation was canceled. And please notify security if someone attempts to dispute it. They are not approved. The manager paused. Sir, they are still in the room. I am aware, I said. They can navigate their own way home. When they returned and discovered that everything had changed, I was in the kitchen when I heard the car doors slam. Voices followed. Loud and terrified. My mother makes a high-pitched whine. Hank yelled. Madison's voice rose over them all, loud and angry. I did not rush. I stirred the coffee and waited. Then came the thumping. Boom, boom, boom. Open the door, Hank's voice. We know you are in there. I proceeded to the front entry, coffee still in hand, and looked through the peephole. There they were. All 3. Red-faced, disheveled. Luggages piled on the porch. Madison was barefoot for some reason. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door just enough to meet their eyes. Whatever happened to our keys? Hank demanded. I drank my coffee. Oh, you mean the ones that I rekeyed? They don't function anymore. Really, man, he snapped. Are you serious now? I nodded calmly. Dead serious. Mom pushed past him. We've just gotten off a 14-hour flight. We are fatigued, hungry. You are trespassing, I said. This is private property. Madison said. You are joking. Her tone was caustic and sarcastic. Are you really shutting out your own family? I stared at her for a second too long before saying bluntly. You are not my family. Her jaw fell. Hank turned to me, his eyes wild. Okay. Wow. This is messed up. We were stranded in Osaka, with no money, accommodation, or Wi-Fi. Do you know what that was like? It must have been difficult, I added. Imagine yourself stuck in a distant nation on someone else's dime. Oh wait, that's what you did. Hank's face turned red. You have embarrassed us. You canceled everything. We couldn't even catch a cab to the airport. They froze the cards. They froze everything. Yeah, I replied, folding my arms. That is what usually happens when you commit credit card fraud. Mom gave a gasp. Fraud. Oh, don't be too emotional. I held up my phone, the screen flashing with a paused screenshot of the hotel manager's email. Unauthorized guest. The charges are challenged. I looked at Hank. Did you, or did not, add Madison to the apartment under my name? He opened and closed his mouth before looking at Madison. She shrugged. I stepped back and allowed them to view inside the house. Not much was left. The sofa was gone. The dining table is gone. All the furnishings they used to lounge on, as if they owned the place? Donated. The walls were unadorned. I'd cleaned up everything they touched. Mom stepped forward and stated, You emptied the house. Correction, I said. My residence. Hank clenched his hands. We have lived here for years. Without paying rent, I added. Without contributing. Without regard. Mom's face distorted. We are your family. This is disgusting. You're punishing us for a single error. I laughed once. One mistake? You stole my vacation. I used my credit. They threw me out of my own preparations for my father's birthday because I wasn't entertaining enough. Do you hear yourselves? Madison rolled her eyes and remarked, You are being petty. You are upset because we had a better time without you. That's when I went completely outside and shut the door behind me. Do you think this is about Japan? I inquired, keeping my voice quiet. You think this is only one trip? Number this is about every second I spent sacrificing for you. Every $1 I gave. Every time I allowed you to stay here rent-free, you laughed behind my back. We did not, Mom started. You did, I interrupted. All of you. And now I'm finished. Hank shook his head in disbelief. So we're homeless now? No, I replied. You've got 2 weeks. Rent has tripled. You bear the cost of utilities. And the guest suite was locked. If you wish to stay, you must pay. He scoffed. You can't be serious. Madison folded her arms. You can't just evict us. Actually, I responded, taking a copy of the lease agreement from my coat pocket. I can. It is lawful. It's finished. Your credit card was denied this morning at the coffee shop. I received a notification. The quiet struck like a bomb. I turned and walked back inside. Hank came at me and grabbed my arm. Wait. Please, he said. His voice crackled. You do not comprehend. I don't have anywhere to go. Madison felt this vacation would bring us closer to the family. She did not mean to hurt you. Madison opened her lips to argue but then stopped. Hank was crying. I looked at him. Really stared at him. I felt nothing. No pity. No fury. Only a pristine, frigid void. You were my brother, I explained. And you traded me for entertainment value. That is not a family. That is a reality show. Then I went inside, locked the door, and left them standing in the wind. They returned to a new world, one without me. 3 days. That is how long it took after they returned for the true mayhem to begin. The first morning following their return was peaceful, too quiet. I expected yelling, guilt trips, and maybe a torrent of messages on the family group chat. But nothing. I ate breakfast alone, coffee, a croissant, and an oddly gratifying sensation of calm. It was a silence I hadn't experienced in years. Not the type you hear, but the kind you carry within you. But on day 4, my phone finally turned on. Can we speak? Mom. I am sorry for what occurred. We've all made errors. Please do not do this to your father. I did not respond. Not because I had nothing to say. I simply didn't owe them an explanation anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt no need to defend myself to people who never listened. Then the real fallout started. The cards were blocked. Madison attempted to buy coffee downtown, declined. Twice. I received the push notice and smiled. She shared a story. Some folks are simply vengeful. I deleted it 5 minutes later. A week after the new lease began, the rent was quadruple the previous rate. I received an email. Hello. We are having trouble with the new rent. Could we discuss alternatives? No name. Only the family account. I ignored it. Jobs. Hank, who had spent years lounging about my house without a single proper job, suddenly began taking on part-time jobs. A gym friend informed me that Hank was now folding towels at the front desk. I was not moved to sympathy. I've moved into a modest loft apartment downtown. Concrete floors. Tall windows. Everything is minimalistic. There's no family-style clutter. There are no borrowed shoes in the hallway. No half-eaten leftovers that were not mine. I awoke at 7 a.m., went to the gym, worked from home, and went for evening walks. For the first time in years, every hour, dollar, and breath belonged to me. There were no texts asking for help with the groceries, no guilt trips about needing a little aid until payday. There were no calls from Mom stating, "It is your brother. How do you say no?" Just silent. In week 2, Hank finally texted, I acknowledge that I made a mistake. I really do. Mads left. She claimed she did not sign up for this. I understand it now. You were correct. I stared at it for quite a while. This was the same Hank who laughed at my goals, thought I was overly serious, and didn't know how to have fun. Now he was alone, left by the fun girlfriend, forced to confront the issue without his human credit card. I didn't respond. Then the actual bomb dropped. A letter from a lawyer. My attorney indicated that your parents are claiming partial ownership of the residence. Based on alleged financial contributions over time, we have requested proof. So far, they have not sent anything. I laughed. Not because it was humorous, but because it was so stupid that it didn't deserve anything else. They were always convinced that if I possessed anything, they had rights to it. I remembered my mom's line. Sweetheart, this is a family home. What's yours is ours. What about now? Now, ours meant nothing. Mom wrote another message. We did not raise you to be like this. What does Dad think? This time I responded. You raised me to serve you. That's it for now. What struck me the most was not their outrage. It was how quickly things fell apart without me. Hank was working 10-hour shifts and hustling to pay bills. Mom began calling old acquaintances, the ones she used to ridicule for raising ungrateful children. Dad? As usual, silence reigned. He'd been silent through every quarrel, insult and treachery. His commitment was to neutrality. And now, they were finally living in the world they created, one in which I was not present to correct everything. And me? I sat on a new couch in a new apartment, drinking coffee that no one questioned, surrounded by nothing I didn't want. For the first time in my life, I was not being used. For the first time, I didn't feel obligated to show up for people who had never shown up for me. And for the first time, I was not upset. I was free. I was never the issue. I was the solution that they abused. Sometimes silence is louder than screams. It's been 3 months since I pulled the plug. No longer free rent. No more brotherly favors. No more pretending that family represents affection rather than leverage. I expected to feel guilt, grief, and even loneliness. But no. I'm feeling something stronger. Peace. I wake up without fear, without anticipating the next request, the next deception disguised as a courtesy. I don't flinch when my phone vibrates. I'm not bracing myself for guilt trips disguised as checks in. I feel like I've stepped out of a fog and can now breathe. While unpacking at my new home a week ago, I came across an old box. Inside there were photos, birthday cards, and a folder labeled, Family Stuff. I opened it, and saw previous plane tickets, invoices from family holidays that I had paid for, and hotel reservations in my name. It struck me like a brick. Every family memory was created using my credit card. They claimed I was cold. But I was the only person who kept the lights on. I browsed through a few pictures. I smiled in every situation. Giving, gifting, driving, and paying. What about the others? Relaxed. Carefree. They were not required to steer, just like passengers in a car. I used to think it made me stronger. Now I see it has rendered me invisible. What they adored was not me. It was my utility. And when I stopped being useful, they stopped being affectionate. Hank has not messaged me since Madison departed. I learned from a mutual contact that he relocated into a basement apartment and began delivering meals. And for once, I did not feel superior. I didn't feel anything. Because now his life is his responsibility, not mine. Madison cleansed her social media accounts. We deleted our previous photographs. Unfollowed the entire family. Her fun ended when the free lifestyle did. Mom, she sent one last text. We did not raise you to be like this. We miss who you used to be. And I responded, you miss the version of me who would never say no. He's gone. Dad remained mute. Of course he did. He always did. Years spent watching everything fall apart while sipping his coffee in solitude. He never yelled, never hit. He was just watching. And honestly, it was worse. It rendered his complicity polite, but fatal. I stopped expecting them to provide closure, so I gave it to myself. I sat alone one night. No television, no phone. Just myself and a glass of wine, as the lights outside flicker on in neighboring flats. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel empty. It felt deserved. That night, I scrawled something on a sticky note and taped it to my mirror. I owe no one more than I do myself. I've been reading it as a prayer every morning since. It's funny how the folks who previously drained me now label me remote. They say I have changed. You bet I did. I used to be the bridge they walked across. Now I'm the ocean they can't cross. Lisa, Hank's ex, messaged me a few days earlier. We rarely spoke back when they were together, but she was always kind. Quiet. You were the only person who saw through it. The way they handled you was inappropriate. I'm glad you departed. You've saved yourself. It struck me harder than it should have, because I'd begun to suspect that perhaps I was the problem. Lisa reminded me that I wasn't insane. I was the first to wake up. I used to think that walking away was selfish. Now I understand. It is self-preservation. They taught me that love requires sacrifice. But it was never their sacrifice. Only my. They labeled me cruel. I call it clarity. They labeled me heartless. I call it healing. They labeled me selfish. But only after I'd stopped being theirs. And now for the greatest part? I don't detest them. I do not wish them any pain. I don't owe them anything anymore. And freedom? It's like you're taking your first breath. Next week, I'll be heading to Iceland. Solo trip. I had always wanted to see the Northern Lights. Never went. There was always another person's emergency. This is someone else's drama. Someone else's vacation, at my expense. But not anymore. This time, I will go for myself. And when I'm standing under that dazzling sky and the frigid air, thousands of miles away from everything I used to carry, I'll finally say it out loud. I'm not your safety net. I am not your backup plan. I'm not your bank backup or fool. I am me. And for the first time in my life, that is enough. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. Dad told me I wasn't his son anymore on Father's Day. So I cut them off, and now they're begging me to save the business I built for them. On Father's Day, my father brought my brother and his sons fishing. I discovered it by looking at images online. I called him. He said, "You're not a part of this family in the same way they are." I questioned what he meant. He responded, "You're a disappointment. I don't tell people you're my son." My mother got on the phone and said, "Why are you having difficulties again? Let them enjoy the day." I said, "Understood." That night, I cut contact. Later, I made a decision that struck them hard. Now they're knocking on my door. "Please chat to us. We need you." So, this is probably going to be buried because I don't post often and it's long. But or perhaps someone will get it or simply roast me. I do not care. Also, I'm typing this on my phone in the kitchen because I can't sleep. So that's why it's so messy. So Sunday was Father's Day, to be honest. I didn't think much about it at first. My family isn't particularly close, but it's also not the type that never talks. Usually there is some group chat spam. Perhaps a meme. My mom is guilt-tripping everyone into calling Dad or anything. This year. Nothing. Not a single text from my brother, father, or mother. It felt strange, but not too strange. Sometimes they just become busy. I figured maybe they were doing something. Perhaps I will hear from them later. But then I'm just scrolling through stories on my phone, as usual. And my cousin tweets a fuzzy photo of a group of people on a dock holding up fish and grinning. I didn't think much of it until I discovered it was my father, brother, and their 2 sons. In the backdrop, I notice my uncle and a few other relatives. So it's obviously an entire thing, not just a casual fishing trip. And my father is right in the midst, looking like he just won the lottery, holding up this hideous catfit. They're at the lake we used to go to as kids. I zoom in, and it's definitely them. So I read back over my texts to see if I missed anything, but there's nothing. Not even a hello. "Wanna come out? Do not bring snacks." Nothing. I even checked the previous group conversation. Just died. Not gonna lie, it hurt. However, I was more perplexed than anything else. I haven't had any major disagreements with anyone lately. And I was genuinely at my parents' house last week helping my father set up his new phone because he despises technology. He said nothing about this, just acted normally. Even asked if I could assist him get his email to function. So, it bothered me for a long time. I texted my brother Oliver. "Just a hello, are you guys at the lake?" Like I'm fishing for information while trying not to sound salty. He leaves me on read. I tried my father. Just call him up and get it over with. He picks up, doesn't even say hello, and seems annoyed, as if I disrupted something important. I inquire whether they're having a nice time. He acts as if he does not understand what I am saying. So I inquire if they're at Lake Charlie. That's the location. He becomes quiet, then replies, "Yeah, we're out here. It's Father's Day. You know how it is." So I just ask directly, "Why didn't anyone invite me?" And he gets this tone like he's weary of me. Says it's just something for the genuine family. He says, "I'm not a part of it the way Oliver and his boys are." I chuckle because I believe he's joking. But he's completely serious. I'm thinking, what does that even mean? Then he says, "You're a disappointment, Elio." I don't tell people you're my son anymore. I just stare at the wall. I can hear folks in the background fooling around, with one yelling about a fish. I inquire if Mom is present, and he says, "Yes, she's here." Suddenly she's on the phone. She has her "I'm so tired" voice, as if I just woke her up at 3 a.m. She tells me, "I'm constantly making problems. Why can't I just let them have their day? Let them enjoy themselves. Stop trying to drag everyone down." I ask her if she really thinks I'm doing that, and she just sighs and says, "Elio, can you just let it be for once?" So I simply responded, "Okay, understood." I hung up. I don't slam the phone down since it's my phone and I'm not an idiot. But I put it down so hard on the counter that it rattles my cup. Then it just goes quiet. I try to do something else but can't. I go out back and sit on the stairs for a while. Do not even smoke. I quit last year. This nonsense is not going to happen again. I keep thinking, did I do something? Did I neglect something important? But nothing. I always show up, help others and keep my head down. I'm not flawless. But I am not a criminal. I just don't fit their definition of a legitimate son. I guess I start remembering all the times this has happened, albeit in lower doses. They just texted me, as they did on my birthday last year. No dinner. Nothing. When my automobile broke down, my father told me to be more responsible. When Oliver's automobile broke down, his father drove out in the storm to help. Did not even complain. I'd always known I was the odd one out, but I assumed it was just my imagination. It turns out, they see it too. And they're not hiding it anymore. I return inside, and my phone vibrates. I glance, and it's a text from my mother. "Please don't make this a thing. Not even a question." I don't respond. I go dark on them right then. I block the group chat, mute their numbers, and remove my father's contact information. I take their pictures from my phone and fridge. I'm not even sure why. It just feels like the right thing. I slept like garbage that night. I kept repeating the call in my head, attempting to figure out what I did. But after a while, I became upset. Like, screw it. I am not begging anyone to include me. Do you desire a family made up entirely of actual people? Fine. Have fun. See how it works out when I'm not around to rectify your mistakes. Because here's the thing. For years I've been dealing with all of their trash. Bills, technology, and even some financial details. Because my father can't figure out online banking. They never thanked me for it. I just acted like it was my job. I guess I was hoping that one day they'd notice or just treat me like everyone else. But no. And to be honest, I'm weary of appearing as if it doesn't bother me. I am not going to try to win them over. So it was Sunday. I have not heard anything since. I know they'll come running soon since they always do when something breaks or someone needs money, but this time, I don't believe I'm concerned. Actually, rethink that. I am kind of looking forward to it. Anyway, I'm not sure if anyone has ever had this happen, or if I'm simply yelling into the abyss. Nigel, I'm strangely cool about it now, but also just finished. So, Father's Day 2024, the year I discovered I'm not even related apparently. I'm not sure what comes next, but I'm not going to just take it. Not this time. I'll keep you updated if anything exciting happens, but for now, I'm going to go eat the leftover pizza they didn't ask me to. LMAO, Update 1. Okay, so here's the next round. I didn't expect to be back so soon, but things moved faster than I anticipated. The energy some of you brought to my previous post was incredible, so I guess I'll simply keep it as authentic as possible. I'm not going to stretch this out with big life lessons or anything. This is exactly what happened next. So following Father's Day, I switched into full ghost mode. I muted the group chat and banned the primary numbers, but I didn't block everyone since I wanted to see how long it would be before anyone noticed I was gone. It turns out not long at all. The next morning, I receive one of those missed call notices from my brother Oliver, which I ignore. Like 2 hours later, my mother texts, "Just can you help with Dad's TV? He says it's not working again." Bro, I just was told I'm not family, and now I'm supposed to play tech support. I simply leave her to read. I suppose that was my first taste of vengeance, but it didn't feel adequate. The group chat resumes its activity on Tuesday. I see a preview on my lock screen. I didn't leave. I only muted to see them squirm a little. Mostly it was my mother and Oliver. Mom is saying things like, "Don't ignore us. It's childish." Oliver's got the classic, "Bro, stop making things weird for everyone. You always do this." I keep not replying, which seems to irritate them more than simply cursing them out. I go about my day, getting groceries, vacuuming my flat, and playing around online. Every few hours, I receive another text. Nothing from my father, which is not surprising. That person will wait till everyone else has done his dirty job before acting like he is the victim. Now, this is where things become interesting. Some background. For the past few years, I've been in charge of most of the family's mundane tasks. Utilities, phone subscriptions, and even certain account logins from my father's side business. He can hardly operate his own phone. So I set up all of his business information online. I never received payment for it. Never received a thank you. I just got told to take care of it because I know computers. So I recognize that if they want to cut me out, that's great. They can sort it all out on their own. So I start by logging into the shared utility account. I check that all of the bills are up to date. I pay them every month. They just sent me some money using Venmo. Sometimes late, sometimes not at all. I remove my card, remove my name from the approved user list, and send a generic email to the provider instructing them to put the account in my father's name. Then I do the same with the phone plans. I text my brother, "You and Dad are responsible for your own lines now." I'm done. No smiling face, no drama. I waited a day and received nothing. Then the calls began. Oliver, of course, comes first. He leaves a very passive-aggressive voicemail about how I'm making a big deal out of nothing, and that Dad is too old for this stress. I don't respond. My mother is next. She is crying. I can hear it in her voice, but she's also upset, as if I'm being unfair. I feel a little awful, but then I recall Sunday, and it all goes away. On Thursday, my father finally called. He doesn't even say hello before going on about how I'm being dramatic, how I usually do this, and how I'm causing problems for the family. I push back, telling him that he made it obvious that I am not family, so why should I do family chores? He attempts to explain that he didn't intend it that way, but then instantly tells me to stop acting out and grow up. I advise him to place the accounts in his name or lose the services, and then hang up. He calls back. I don't respond. While all of this is going on, I'm receiving texts from my aunt, Dad's sister, and even my cousin, the person who posted the phishing pic, asking what happened. I just sent screenshots of the texts from my father and mother. There is no explanation, only the facts. I don't want to engage into a huge controversy with the extended family, but I also don't want them to think I flipped out for no reason. Friday is when things really begin to fall apart for them. My brother sends me texts in all caps. "Why is the internet turned off?" Dad is freaking out. I urged him to call the firm. That was not my problem. He tries calling me. I forwarded it to voicemail. My mother arrives at my apartment, knocks for around 5 minutes, and when I open the door, she tries to walk by me into the kitchen as usual. I block her with my arm, telling her she cannot just walk in. She pushes past me nevertheless, goes straight to the refrigerator, and then starts complaining about how I'm spoiling everything. I ask if she wants a drink. She slaps my hand away, saying I am not humorous. She's not crying this time, just angry. She says I'm acting unusual. I told her she'd made me one. She slammed the refrigerator door. I tell her to leave. She eventually does, slamming the front door shut. Now, I am not claiming it felt fantastic, but it also did not feel horrible. I return to my phone, read through social media, and notice that my brother's wife has posted a passive hostile meme about people only phoning when they need something. I kind of giggle because she has always acted as if Oliver is the golden child, and I am just the spare. My cousin sends me a direct message wondering if I'm okay, so whatever. I'll just leave it to read. By Saturday, Dad's side gig account has been flagged since he is unable to log in. I modify the security information so that he can't just reset the password. I received a call from an unknown number. It's my father using someone else's phone. I guess he became turned off since the plan changed. He's ranting, claiming I'm destroying everything he's built. I tell him I'm not fixing anything. He can work things out like a true father. He hangs up. The problem is, my father treats me like this because he has always wanted a smaller version of himself. Someone who enjoys outdoor activities, sports, and fishing. I've never really fit into it. Oliver did, therefore he received the attention. I just get the chores, the dull stuff, and the invisible work. I believe he genuinely believes I owe him for not being the son he desired. However, I no longer do. The only time I feel uneasy is when my nephew texts me and asks if I want to play online with him. He's not sure what's going on. He's only about 10. I ignore it because I'm not going to get drawn into it. Later my brother texts me and says I'm a jerk for upsetting his child. Says I'm punishing the entire family for dad's error. I don't respond. I'm not taking the bait. So, now it's Sunday again, 1 week after Father's Day. There are no utilities in their name, no phone, and no account access. I heard from a neighbor that my mother was at the store asking folks if they knew anyone who might help her get her phone to operate. My father's side gig has essentially stalled. Oliver is posting less online, which is the strangest aspect of all of this. The nicest thing is that I know they are all waiting for me to give in. They believe that if they guilt trip me enough, I will show up as usual and cure everything. Not this time. I am done. I know this isn't a thrilling conclusion, but it's just getting started. I still have a few plays remaining, and next week promises to be much more interesting. I'll provide another update if things become more complicated. For the time being, I'm eating chips and binge-watching YouTube like a villain. Update 2. So, I guess this is part 3 of Not Gonna Lie. Things got far messier than I expected. As I mentioned in the previous remarks, I was tired of being the family guy or whatever, and I'd already removed my name on bills and tech, but I had no idea how quickly the consequences would go beyond them texting me like angry children. So, first weird thing. Wednesday night, I'm boiling up some frozen noodles when I hear a loud beating on my door. I check the peephole, and it's my brother Oliver. I don't respond at first since I'm not trying to get involved, but he just keeps hitting. So I open the door slightly. He appears angry and tells me to grow up and stop toying with the family's belongings. He attempts to push the door open with his shoulder. I hold it and encourage him to relax. He gets this face and says, "I'm ruining everything for Dad and Mom." I tell him he can call customer service like everyone else, and he snaps, pushes the door harder, and nearly gets inside. I shove him back and tell him to get off my porch. He calls me a loser and walks away, slapping the railing. I shut the door and stood there for a moment, listening to him stomp down the stairs. I check my phone and discover that my mother has also been calling. She leaves a voicemail, her voice unsteady, informing me that I'm making your father sick from stress. Oliver claims that he is unable to reconnect the utilities, and that his father's business has been frozen. I get about 4 more texts from her inside the next hour, all variants of, "Come talk to us. Stop this. You're making it worse." One enraged one simply said, "This is not what family does." I nearly laughed. Yes, no kidding. The next day, as I go back from the store, I see my father's car in the parking lot. I try to escape, but he catches me and calls my name. He looks tired, as if he hasn't slept, and he simply starts talking about how I'm being selfish, how I know how much he depends on me, and how I need to let this go. When he declared I wasn't his son, I promised him I'd let it go. He acts as if he can't remember saying it, tries to claim I twisted his remarks. I tell him he cannot have it both ways. Either I am family, or I am not. And if not, I'm not performing the job. He turns red. Says I am keeping the entire family hostage. I shrug. Say perhaps he should have considered that previously. He slams his car door so hard that I can hear it from halfway across the lot. By the weekend, I start receiving messages from folks I've barely spoken to. My aunt and cousin are the ones who uploaded the fishing choice. Even Anita, my brother's wife. Anita's message is simply, "What did you do?" Oliver is losing it. Your father cannot access his bank account. Mom is constantly crying. I said, "Ask them." She responded with a torrent of text about how complicated family is, and how I shouldn't make this a public disaster. I do not reply. Then there is the group chat. They all unmuted and begin wandering off. Oliver accuses me of acting like a baby and blaming everyone. My mother pulls the guilt trip, claiming that grandma is worried and sick. Dad simply says enough, and asks me to come fix it. I'll publish one message. If I'm not family, please don't ask me to undertake family work. Then I mute it again. So the real fun begins on Sunday. Because apparently my father's side project requires him to have access to specific internet resources I put up for him. He is unable to invoice people. He is unable to access the primary account. And a client begins phoning my phone number because I was the original contact. I instructed them to call my father. Not my problem. Dad blows up my phone. Leaves voicemail messages. One in which he is nearly spitting out his anger. Says I'm trashing his reputation and years of work. I removed them that night. My mother returns to my apartment, beats on the door, and when I open it, she attempts to guilt me, saying, "Are you really going to let your father's business break apart?" I tell her, I'm not doing anything until they start treating me like I matter, not just the family janitor. She accuses me of being overly theatrical. I tell her to leave. She slaps my arm hard before storming out, slamming the door behind her. I lock it and sit at my kitchen table, eating cereal. The next morning, I see my brother's wife at the store, but she doesn't look at me. My cousin texts me and asks if I could just fix things for Grandma. I tell her I'm not from the family, remember? She doesn't respond. What's wild is how quickly everything snowballs. Dad's business is essentially dead for the week. Oliver's credit card gets frozen because I remove my name from the family account. Mom is asking neighbors if they know anyone who can fix her Wi-Fi. I heard from a friend that my father was moaning about me at the local pub, calling me ungrateful and spoiled. Meanwhile, I'm simply hanging out at home, cleaning my bathroom, watching YouTube, and scrolling through memes. I start getting strange messages from individuals I haven't spoken to in years, including my Uncle Zane, who believes that family should be about forgiveness, not revenge. I merely advised him to talk to my father about it. The issue is, I understand exactly why my father is like this. He had always wanted Oliver to be the golden boy. And because I wasn't into the same things, he just kept me in the background. I was always the person mending stuff, never the one invited out. And now that I'm gone, he has to deal with all I've done. And it's wrecking him. He's not dumb. He just never imagined I'd walk away. I know some would accuse me of being harsh, but honestly, I'm tired of having them walk all over me. They want to treat me as an outsider. They can handle life without me. The last thing I heard this weekend was Oliver leaving a voicemail at midnight. Says I'm ruining the family, and if I don't repair it, don't bother coming back. I erase it, switch off my phone and simply sit in the dark for a bit. So, I suppose this is what happens when you push someone too far. I'm not sure what will happen next, but I will not back down. They can continue smashing doors and leaving angry voicemails. I am actually sleeping better than I have in months. I'll keep you updated if anything else exciting happens. I might go have some pizza. I don't know. Final update. So, I suppose this is the final post because there isn't much else to tell unless the home actually burns down or something. I'm not making predictions, just saying. Anyway, congratulations to everyone who suggested I avoid touch and let them stew. You received your wish, Ningle. I didn't even need to do anything. I just maintained my limits and let them tackle their own issues. But they were able to make it a disaster, all on their own. This week started strangely. I awoke early Tuesday morning because someone was knocking. Like, not just regular knocking, but the kind where you know the individual is angry or desperate. I ignored it at first, but then the doorbell rang. I get up and notice my brother's automobile parked crookedly outside my house. I stood in the hallway for a brief moment, listening to him grumble outside. He finally went, slamming the car door. Not barely 1 hour later, my phone explodes. Oliver sent 11 messages. First it's just picking up. Then it's all capitals. What have you done? She refuses to stop crying. Simply pick up. I stare at it, wondering, who is she? I know his wife is not the sort to cry. Then I see a missed call from my mother, a few from my father, and even my aunt. I simply shut my phone and prepared coffee. I'm not going to get drawn into any morning drama. A few hours later, I go to check my mail, and who is waiting in my lobby but my mother? She's wearing sunglasses, which reflects her whole, I'm not crying attitude. She asks me, "Are you really going to let this family fall apart?" I answer, "I didn't start it." She continues, "Your dad can't even look at your brother right now." Anita, my brother's wife, is saying she might take the kids and go stay with her sister, and Grandma is phoning every day to find out what happened. I tell her, "Ask Dad." She says, "You know, he won't." Then she takes my arm firmly. And I ask her to let go. She simply lets go and stands in the hall, blocking the door, saying, If I just come over and help them for one day, she'll make sure Dad apologizes. I tell her, there's nothing you can give me. I want to. She continues. You're being so cold, Elio. This isn't you. I shrug, saying, perhaps you don't know me. She shakes her head and storms out, slamming the lobby door. Not even 5 minutes later, my brother calls again. Now he's leaving voicemails, his voice cracking, saying, you ruined everything. Dad says he won't speak to anyone until you solve the business. Anita is preparing bags. The children are weeping. I just sit there browsing through my feed. I received a message from my cousin. I simply ask, is everything okay? And do not respond. I believe what really got to them was that I didn't give in. I assumed that after a few days of silent treatment, they'd move on and figure it out. But they're utterly coming apart. I believe they always assumed that if they pushed me hard enough, I'd give in and fix everything. And now that I am not there, they have no idea what to do. So by Thursday, I'm getting texts from individuals I rarely speak to. My Uncle Zane left me a voicemail telling me to think about the broader picture and forgive for Grandma's sake. My aunt phones and says, your father's business is about to fail, and no one can access any of the accounts. I tell her the same thing I told everyone else, not my problem. That night, my brother returns and begins hammering on my door again. I cracked it open. He tries to push past me, but I shove him back. He says, you're going to destroy this family. I tell him, if it was that easy to destroy, maybe it wasn't strong in the first place. He tries to say, I'm being dramatic. I tell him, I'm just tired of being the backup plan. He throws his hands up, says, fine, do whatever you want, and storms out. Friday morning, my mother texts me and says, your father is sick. He's not eating. You're torturing him. I just leave it to read. I spend the day cleaning up my place, watching idiotic movies, and doing usual things. And all the while I'm thinking about how incredible it is that for years I was in charge of making sure the bills were paid, the accounts were set up, and the business ran well, and no one cared. Nobody noticed, honestly. But the moment I quit, the entire thing falls apart. And now, I'm the villain. They could have learnt how to accomplish these things, but they didn't bother. They basically thought I'd always be present. On Saturday night I received a DM from Anita, my brother's wife. She says, I don't care what occurred, the children are afraid. Oliver refuses to speak to anyone, and your father just sits in the living room staring at nothing. I do not respond. Yesterday, I ran into my father at the store. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, barely looked at me, attempted to murmur something, then shook his head and continued going. So that's where we are now. My phone is still filled with unread messages. Most of them just say, please talk to us, we need you. My brother sent 11 SMS in a succession, both angry and imploring. Grandma even called and left a message saying, I don't know what's going on, but I hope you come home soon. I won't call her back. I know some people will tell me I should feel awful, but I don't. Not right now. I spent too many years as the family ghost, clearing up problems no one saw. I'm not going back because they're terrified of their own disaster. They made their decision. I'm simply giving them exactly what they wanted. So I think this is the moment at which I will stop updating because, honestly, I don't care what happens next. I'm simply going to live my life and eat my chips while they figure out how to be a family without me. Nell, it's quiet, tranquil. Thanks for watching and being part of the drama. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a wild news story. My boyfriend provided only superficial care when I was battling uterine cancer. He even scheduled knee surgery to avoid the responsibility of caring for me. My name is Elizabeth Bennett, and I am 51 years old. Life, with all its unexpected turns and twists, has brought me here. Standing at a crossroads in a relationship that has given me 7 years of companionship, but now leaves me questioning what true partnership means, especially in times of crisis. This contemplation of my relationship with James, my boyfriend, comes at a time when my life has been overshadowed by a recent, serious cancer diagnosis. James and I met almost exactly 7 years ago, a chance encounter that neither of us was looking for but seemed destined all the same. I was at a local bookstore, rummaging through shelves looking for a rare edition of Jane Austen's novels, a passion of mine since my teenage years. He was there too, not particularly interested in books but trying to find a thoughtful gift for his sister. Our hands reached for the same prized copy of Pride and Prejudice. Our eyes met, and in that awkward laughter that followed our tussle over the book, Something clicked. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was certainly curiosity that wanted to know more. From there, our relationship grew steadily, if somewhat cautiously. We were both coming from the wounds of previous marriages that had left us skeptical of love. James, with his quiet demeanor and a fiercely independent streak, was initially a puzzle I felt compelled to solve. He had a quirky sense of humor and an intellect that challenged and intrigued me. His background in engineering and his penchant for solitary hobbies like woodworking and model building contrasted with my career in social work and my more extroverted nature. Despite these differences, or perhaps because of them, we found common ground. We enjoyed long drives, jazz music, and the quiet comfort of each other's presence without the need for constant conversation. Living arrangements came naturally over time. Although James moved into my house, a cozy Victorian I had secured after my divorce, our lives maintained a certain partition. The house was in my name, and we had no shared property. His private nature meant I had little insight into his financial matters, though he was never hesitant to contribute to household expenses or surprise me with groceries or an unexpected household repair. However, the idea of marriage was off the table for James. He valued his independence too much, often stating that love didn't need the bonds of legal ties to validate it. In many ways, I agreed, appreciating the simplicity of our arrangement where love was a choice we made daily, not a contract we were obliged to fulfill. Yet despite our harmonious living and the stability of our respective careers, there were aspects of our relationship that remained unfulfilled. James was never one for grand romantic gestures. Birthdays and anniversaries were often marked with little fanfare. Gifts were practical rather than thoughtful, and celebrations were muted, often just an evening out at a restaurant we both liked. This lack of romance was something I had come to terms with, focusing instead on the reliability and steadiness James offered. Our relationship, while not fiery or adorned with the typical trappings of romance, was functional and comfortable. We had a healthy sex life, and our discussions, though rarely about our emotions, were always respectful and insightful. Yet, as the years wore on, I sometimes found myself longing for a bit more warmth, a bit more of the unexpected, the small surprises that make the heart flutter. The true test of our relationship, however, began in January when I was diagnosed with late-stage ovarian cancer. The news came as a devastating blow, not just to me but to the fragile equilibrium of our relationship. Cancer, with its insidious tendrils, seemed determined not only to wreak havoc on my body but also to unearth the foundations of my relationship with James. The morning I received the diagnosis, the world seemed to pause. An eerie stillness that belied the storm raging inside me. Late-stage ovarian cancer, the doctor had said, his voice a blend of compassion and clinical detachment. The words echoed in my head as I drove home, each syllable a weighty gavel marking the end of one life phase and the uncertain beginning of another. Arriving home, I found James in the backyard, lost in his latest project, a birdhouse he was crafting with meticulous attention. The normalcy of the scene, set against the backdrop of my devastating news, felt surreal. I watched him for a moment, absorbed in his task, unaware of the seismic shift about to enter our lives. "James," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. He looked up, a smile breaking across his face, but it faltered as he took in my expression. The tools fell silent, and he was at my side in an instant, his earlier levity replaced by concern. "I have cancer," I said, the words blunt, irrevocable. His arms came around me then, a strong, steady presence. But inside, my heart was a chaos of fear and sorrow. In the privacy of our living room, I laid out the stark realities of my condition. The cancer was aggressive, widespread, and the treatment would be grueling. I watched his face, the emotions flickering through his eyes, shock, pain, resolve. And then, I gave him an out. An opportunity to walk away before the journey became too difficult, too steeped in medical routines and the shadow of mortality. It was a test, not of his love, but of his willingness to face this harsh road alongside me. He didn't hesitate. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly, squeezing my hand. "I promise to be with you, for better or worse." His words should have brought comfort, and they did, to some extent. But they also stirred a tumult of emotions within me, gratitude, relief, but also a deep, gnawing apprehension. James's decision to stay with me through my cancer diagnosis should have been a source of unwavering comfort. In some ways, it was. In others, it highlighted the gaps in our relationship that I had long ignored or downplayed. As I navigated the labyrinth of surgeries and chemotherapy, my mixed feelings about his decision became increasingly pronounced. James's willingness to stay was commendable, but his ability to provide the emotional and physical care I needed was painfully lacking. The first major challenge came with my initial surgeries. The doctors performed a hysterectomy and several other procedures to remove as much of the cancer as possible. The recovery was brutal. I was in and out of the hospital, dealing with intense pain, nausea, and an overwhelming sense of vulnerability. James was there, but in a way that felt more obligatory than heartfelt. He drove me to the hospital, sat in the waiting room, and took me home afterward. But once we were home, his role as a caregiver faltered. Managing medications was the first hurdle. The schedule was complex, with different pills at different times, some with food, some without. James struggled to keep it straight, often forgetting doses or mixing up the timings. I tried to make it easier by writing everything down and setting alarms, but it quickly became clear that this was a responsibility beyond his comfort zone. He would get frustrated, not at me, but at the situation, at the helplessness he felt. His frustration manifested in a withdrawn demeanor, leaving me to fend for myself more often than not. Then there were the basics of caregiving, ensuring I was hydrated, bringing me food, checking in on my comfort. James tried, he really did, but his efforts were often half-hearted. He would bring me a glass of water and then retreat to his workshop or his computer. Meals were an afterthought, usually something quick and easy, lacking the nourishment and care I needed. I found myself relying on meal delivery services more and more, realizing that the emotional support I craved was not forthcoming. As the chemotherapy began, my world narrowed to a series of treatments and side effects. Chemo was a relentless adversary, sapping my strength, stealing my hair, and leaving me perpetually nauseous. Each session felt like a battle, and though James drove me to a few of them, his presence was more logistical than comforting. He would drop me off and pick me up, but during the treatments, it was my friends and family who sat with me, held my hand, and talked me through the worst of it. My best friend Sarah was a godsend. She organized a meal train, ensuring that I had nutritious food every day. She coordinated with my family, making sure someone was always available to help. My sister Kate flew in from out of state multiple times, staying with me for weeks at a time. She was a natural caregiver, intuitively knowing what I needed before I even had to ask. Between Sarah, Kate, and other friends who stepped up, I was surrounded by a network of support that filled the gaps James couldn't bridge. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of chemo, I lay in bed, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. James sat at his desk, absorbed in his work, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil I was in. I watched him, the man I loved, and wondered how we had come to this point. His promise to stay had been genuine, but the reality of what staying meant was something neither of us had fully understood. My birthday in April was a turning point. Despite my exhaustion and the constant nausea, I had managed to celebrate James's birthday just a few days earlier. I ordered him a gift from Amazon, bought his favorite takeout, and even mustered the energy to bake him a cake. It wasn't much, but it was a gesture of love and normalcy in a time when everything felt uncertain. When my birthday arrived, I hoped for something, anything, to show that he cared, that he was thinking of me, even in the smallest way. But the day came and went without acknowledgement. No card, no gift, not even a simple happy birthday. The hurt was sharp and immediate, a reminder of the emotional chasm that had always been there but was now impossible to ignore. I didn't need grand gestures. I needed to know that I mattered, that my pain and struggle were seen and acknowledged. His oversight felt like a betrayal, a confirmation of all the doubts that had been simmering beneath the surface. The upcoming surgery was another significant hurdle. Scheduled for mid-May, it was to be a major operation, a hysterectomy and debulking surgery to remove as much of the remaining cancer as possible. The recovery time was estimated at 4 weeks, a period during which I would be at my most vulnerable, needing constant care and support. James, in his pragmatic way, informed me that he had scheduled an elective knee surgery for just 2 days after my operation. His knee had been bothering him for years, but the timing of this decision was bewildering and hurtful. When I expressed my concern, he insisted that his knee pain had suddenly become unbearable and that the surgery couldn't be postponed. His explanation felt like an excuse, a way to avoid the discomfort of my recovery by focusing on his own issues. It was as if he was retreating from the emotional intensity of my illness, seeking refuge in his own pain. During the week leading up to my surgery, James took time off work. Not to be with me, but to go camping and hiking, his way of decompressing before what he saw as a challenging period ahead. He returned home tan and relaxed, ready for his knee procedure, while I was left feeling abandoned, my own surgery looming with a sense of impending dread. The day of my surgery arrived, and I was surrounded by my family and friends, their presence a balm to my anxiety. James was there too, but his focus seemed divided, already anticipating his own upcoming procedure. He stayed with me through the pre-op preparations and kissed me softly before I was wheeled into the operating room, but his touch felt distant, his mind elsewhere. The surgery was a success, the doctors told me, but the recovery was arduous. I was weak, in pain, and emotionally raw. While I was still in the hospital, James underwent his knee surgery and returned home on crutches. When I was finally discharged, it was my sister who brought me home, ensuring I had everything I needed. James, on crutches and struggling with his own discomfort, was hardly in a position to care for me. The irony was not lost on me. 2 patients under one roof, each needing more than the other could give. My friends and family continued to step in, their support unwavering. They brought meals, helped with household chores, and provided the emotional sustenance that was so desperately needed. One afternoon, as I lay on the couch, too weak to move, James called out from the bedroom, asking if I could bring him some water. I stared at the ceiling, the absurdity of the situation sinking in. Here I was, barely able to care for myself, being asked to care for him. It was a moment of clarity, a painful realization that this relationship, as it stood, was untenable. James's aunt called me a few days later, her voice filled with concern. She had heard about my surgery and wanted to wish me well. She also expressed her surprise and disappointment at James's decision to have his knee surgery at such a critical time. "I believe he's experiencing some form of PTSD," she said gently. "His mother died of brain cancer when he was a teenager. She went through years of surgeries and treatments that ultimately failed. This behavior is out of character for him." Her words offered some explanation but no comfort. James's past, his trauma, didn't absolve him of his current actions. I could understand his fear, his retreat. But I couldn't accept it. Not when my own needs were so immediate and profound. As I embarked on the long and arduous road to recovery following my major surgery, the physical challenges were compounded by the emotional toll of navigating my relationship with James. Each day was a battle, not just against the cancer and the pain it brought, but also against the growing realization that the man I loved might not be the partner I needed in this crucial time. During the initial weeks of recovery, the intensity of my physical pain was matched only by the emotional strain of watching James focus largely on himself. While I struggled with the simplest tasks, grappling with my newfound frailty, James was absorbed with his own recovery from his knee surgery. His requests for help with tasks he couldn't manage on his crutches, even as I could barely manage my own needs, felt like a glaring testament to his self-centered approach. Lying on my bed one afternoon, the sounds of James fumbling in the kitchen trying to make himself lunch while I rested, I couldn't help but reflect on our situation. Is this what our relationship has come to? I thought. 2 people living under the same roof, each wrapped up in their own pain, unable to support each other? This internal monologue was a constant during those days, as I wrestled with my feelings of disappointment and abandonment. One evening, as I shared these thoughts over the phone with my sister Kate, she provided the kind of blunt assessment that only someone who loves you deeply can offer. "Liz, you've always known James wasn't great with emotional stuff. But this is different. This isn't just emotional support, it's basic care, compassion. You're recovering from cancer surgery, for heaven's sake. If he can't step up now, when will he ever?" Her words struck a chord. It wasn't just that James was failing to care for me. It was his apparent lack of insight into how his actions, or lack thereof, affected me. This conversation with Kate sparked a series of internal questions about the viability of our relationship. I found myself wondering if his inability to provide support was something I could live with in the long term, especially knowing that my battle with cancer could bring more challenges ahead. I also had long heart-to-hearts with Sarah, who had been instrumental in organizing support during my treatment. During one of her visits, as she sat by my bedside, I confided in her. "He's not mean, Sarah. He's just absent. I feel like I'm going through this alone, even though he's right here." Sarah took my hand, her presence a comforting anchor. "Liz, it's okay to acknowledge that something isn't working. It's okay to want more. You need a partner, especially now. It's not just about having someone physically present. You need someone who's truly with you, in every sense." These conversations, along with my own reflections, led me to a profound understanding. My need for a supportive partner was not just a preference but a necessity, especially as I faced the uncertainty of my health. James's focus on his own issues during my time of greatest need had illuminated a fundamental disconnect in our relationship. It was not merely about his lack of caregiving skills. It was about his inability to prioritize my needs during a critical time. This realization brought clarity but also sorrow. I grieved for the relationship that could not withstand the trials we faced. I mourned the future I had once envisioned with James, now overshadowed by the stark reality of our present circumstances. My decision to address these issues with James was not made lightly. I chose a quiet evening, a few weeks into my recovery, when I felt strong enough to have what I knew would be a challenging conversation. "James," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to talk about us, about how things have been since my surgery. I feel like I'm going through this recovery on my own, and it's made me think a lot about our future." James looked surprised, perhaps a little defensive. "I've been dealing with my knee," he started, but I gently cut him off. "I know, and I understand that's been hard on you. But I can't help feeling like we're not really here for each other. Not in the way I need us to be. This isn't just about now, it's about what this says for our future." The conversation that followed was painful, filled with moments of silence and mutual recognition of the painful truth. James admitted his struggles with facing my illness, echoing what his aunt had shared about his past. Yet understanding his reasons didn't alleviate the reality of my loneliness and the growing gap between us. As we talked, it became clear that our paths were diverging. The love and commitment that had once bound us were not enough to bridge the gap that had formed between our experiences and needs. Deciding to redefine our relationship was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Yet it was also a decision that brought me peace. In recognizing our limitations and acknowledging our needs, we were able to part ways with respect and a deep understanding of each other's struggles. The weeks following our conversation were a time of adjustment. As James moved out and we began our separate lives, I continued to lean on my support network. The love and care from my friends and family were instrumental in my recovery. They provided not just practical help but emotional sustenance, helping me rebuild my strength and reclaim my independence. Reflecting on this period, I realized that my journey through cancer and recovery was also a journey of self-discovery. I learned the importance of asking for what I need, of surrounding myself with people who can truly support me, and of letting go when a relationship no longer serves my best interests. In facing the end of my relationship with James, I found a new beginning for myself, one defined by resilience, hope, and the unwavering support of those who love me. Update. Reflecting on the tumultuous period of my life that followed my cancer diagnosis, I find a mixture of sorrow and clarity. When James promised he'd never leave me after I told him about my illness, I clung to that promise as a beacon of hope. Yet the reality of his presence, detached and insufficient, contrasted sharply with his words. It's a stark reminder of how adversity can reveal the true essence of a person's character and commitment. In the beginning, my heart was filled with gratitude when James said he would stay. However, as my treatment progressed and the demands of caregiving became apparent, his emotional withdrawal became increasingly obvious. It was like living with a shadow of the person I thought I knew. His physical presence in the house didn't translate into the emotional or practical support I desperately needed. It felt as though he was there, but not really with me. This was not just a failure to perform tasks. It was an absence of the compassion and partnership I needed at my most vulnerable. This experience forced me to confront a painful reality reflected in the grim statistics I had read about partners who leave or emotionally check out during illness. It was heartbreaking to recognize that James fit into this narrative. Despite his promise, he wasn't really with me. He was more of a roommate, and not a particularly good one at that, rather than the partner I needed him to be. His inability to support me, which I had hoped might be overcome by the gravity of my situation, seemed instead to deepen the existing fissures between us. My feelings of guilt, while natural, were also a reflection of the empathy and consideration I always strived to offer, even when it wasn't reciprocated. I realized these feelings were misplaced. I was battling cancer, fighting for my life, and also grappling with the emotional neglect from someone who was supposed to be my primary source of support. This realization was crushing but necessary. It wasn't just about the tasks he failed to perform. It was about his failure to be the emotional anchor I needed. Understanding that James's behavior might have been influenced by his own fears or past trauma, perhaps a PTSD response from his mother's death due to cancer, provided some context but no solace. It explained some of his actions but did not excuse them. While compassion for his struggles is important, it should not come at the expense of my own well-being. My health and emotional needs had to take precedence. The possibility that James hadn't left due to financial dependence or his own resentment about feeling trapped added another layer of complexity to our dynamic. It hinted at a relationship sustained not by mutual support and love but by circumstances and convenience, which perhaps made him act out or retreat into himself. Throughout this ordeal, I gave James numerous opportunities to rise to the occasion. Time and again, he showed that he either could not or would not meet the needs of the moment. This was not just about what he hadn't done. It was about what I needed and deserved and was not receiving. Recognizing this was crucial. It forced me to make hard decisions about what was best for my health and happiness. Navigating the end of our relationship was not easy, but it was necessary. I leaned heavily on my family, friends, and the broader support network I was fortunate to have. They showed up for me in ways that James did not, providing not only the practical support I needed but also the emotional care that helped sustain me through one of the most challenging times of my life. As I look back, I understand that it's okay to prioritize my well-being and to feel sad about the end of a relationship while also recognizing that it's the healthiest choice for me. Letting go of James was not just about ending a relationship that was no longer working. It was about reclaiming my life and focusing on my recovery with the support of people who truly cared for me. In this reflection, there is both loss and liberation. I mourn the partner James could not be, but celebrate the strength I found in myself and the love and support from others that illuminated my darkest days. This journey has taught me about the resilience of the human spirit, the importance of self-care, and the power of a supportive community. As I continue to heal and rebuild my life, I carry these lessons with me, grateful for the clarity and purpose they have brought into my life. My partner often shows extreme jealousy and recently became paranoid, believing my new stretch marks were scratches indicating infidelity. My name is Emily, a 24-year-old woman navigating the intricate dance of love and life with my boyfriend Jack, who is 25. We've been together for 3 years, a period marked by highs and lows, laughter and tears, and the steady march towards understanding and trust. Our relationship began in the most unassuming of ways. A chance encounter at a mutual friend's barbecue. I remember the day vividly. The smell of grilled burgers wafting through the air, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, and the warm summer breeze that seemed to whisper promises of something special. Jack and I were introduced by our friend Sarah, who had been trying to set us up for months. I was initially hesitant, having just come out of a tumultuous relationship, but Jack's easy smile and genuine interest in getting to know me slowly chipped away at my reservations. Our first conversation was about our mutual love for hiking, and it wasn't long before we were planning weekend trips to nearby trails. Those early days were filled with discovery and excitement, the kind of heady rush that comes with new love. Fast forward to the present, and we've settled into a cozy rhythm. We share a modest apartment in the city, a 2-bedroom space that we've made our own with mismatched furniture and walls adorned with photos from our adventures. Jack works as a software developer, a job that keeps him busy but allows for a flexible schedule. I, on the other hand, work as a freelance writer, a career that lets me work from home and be my own boss. Our living situation is comfortable, and though we have our disagreements, we've managed to build a life that feels stable and supportive. Recently, I've been on a personal journey to gain weight. For most of my life, I've struggled with being slightly underweight, a condition that left me feeling self-conscious and often drained my energy. With Jack's encouragement and my own determination, I embarked on a mission to put on some pounds in a healthy way. I started eating more balanced meals, incorporating strength training into my exercise routine, and keeping a close eye on my progress. In a few short months, I managed to gain about 7 pounds, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of accomplishment when I looked in the mirror. However, this newfound weight came with unexpected changes. My body, adjusting to the rapid increase, began to show signs of stretching skin. Bright red and purple marks appeared on my thighs and buttocks. Stretch marks, a normal but surprising result of my efforts. I did my best to embrace them, reminding myself that they were a testament to my hard work and dedication to improving my health. Jack was supportive, often complimenting me on my progress and reassuring me that the stretch marks were nothing to be ashamed of. A typical day in our lives starts with the soft beep of Jack's alarm clock at 6:30 a.m. He's an early riser, often heading out for a morning run before diving into his work. I usually wake up around 7 a.m., greeted by the aroma of fresh coffee that Jack prepares before leaving for his run. Mornings are my favorite time of day, a quiet period where I can gather my thoughts and plan my tasks. I sit by the window with my coffee, watching the city come to life, and then settle down at my desk to write. Jack returns from his run around 8 a.m., sweaty but invigorated. We have breakfast together, a simple meal of eggs and toast, sometimes accompanied by a smoothie. Our conversations during breakfast are a mix of work plans, random musings, and shared jokes. After breakfast, Jack heads to his home office, and I return to my writing. The next few hours are spent in productive silence, punctuated by the occasional query or shared snippet from our respective tasks. By lunchtime, we both need a break. We usually eat together, taking the time to reconnect and discuss our progress. Afternoons are a bit more relaxed. Jack might have a few video calls, while I take a walk to clear my head or run some errands. Evenings are our time. We cook dinner together, experiment with new recipes, or indulge in our favorite comfort foods. After dinner, we might watch a movie, play a board game, or simply talk about our day. It's a routine that we've grown accustomed to, a comforting pattern that reinforces our bond. On the day everything changed, our routine started as usual. Jack had gone for his morning run, and I was enjoying my coffee by the window. The sky was a pale blue, streaked with the golden hues of dawn. Birds chirped outside, adding a melodic backdrop to the quiet of our apartment. I relished these moments of solitude, savoring the warmth of the coffee mug in my hands and the peacefulness of the early hour. I had planned to spend the day working on a new article about sustainable living practices, a topic I was passionate about. My notes were spread out on the desk, ready for me to dive into once I finished my coffee. Jack, meanwhile, had a series of meetings lined up for the day. He worked from home most of the time, his job as a software developer allowing him the flexibility to be present, even if his mind was often absorbed in code and algorithms. The morning passed without incident. Jack returned from his run, flushed and energized, and we enjoyed a hearty breakfast together. We talked about our plans for the day and shared a few laughs over a funny video I had found online. After breakfast, we retreated to our respective workspaces. I immersed myself in my writing, the hours slipping by as I crafted sentences and organized my thoughts. By noon the sun was high in the sky, casting a warm glow through the windows. We met for lunch, as we always did, a small ritual that helped us stay connected despite our busy schedules. Jack had made sandwiches, and we sat at the kitchen table, chatting about our work and upcoming plans. It was during this light-hearted conversation about an upcoming trip to the mountains that Jack first noticed the marks. We had been planning this trip for weeks, eager to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and reconnect with nature. I was excitedly talking about the hiking trails and the cozy cabin we had booked when I noticed Jack's gaze drift downward. "Emily, what are those marks on your butt?" he asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and concern. I glanced down, momentarily confused before realizing he had noticed the stretch marks that had recently appeared. I felt a flush of embarrassment but quickly composed myself. "Oh, those are just stretch marks," I replied, trying to keep my tone casual. "I've been gaining some weight, remember? It's just my skin adjusting." Jack's frown deepened. "They don't look like stretch marks. They look more like scratches." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. I felt a pang of frustration and sadness. "Jack, they're stretch marks. They might look red and angry now, but that's just because they're new. They come from underneath the skin, not from the outside." Michael's eyes narrowed slightly as he examined them, but his expression remained unreadable. The room, once filled with the lightness of a leisurely day, now seemed to close in on us with a tangible tension. He stared at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and confusion. "Are you sure? They really don't look like stretch marks to me." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Yes, I'm sure. You can even look it up if you want. Stretch marks can look different on different people, but that's what they are." "Are you accusing me of lying?" I asked, the hurt clear in my voice. It was the first time in our 3-year relationship that I felt a chasm of mistrust opening between us. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, his eyes shifted away from me, fixing on the floor as if it held the answer he needed. Without a word, tears welled up in his eyes, an unusual sight for Michael, who always prided himself on his composure. I reached out to touch his arm, but he gently pulled away and left the room, leaving me alone with a mix of emotions swirling inside me. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the apartment, marking his departure as clearly as it shattered the peace of our day. The hours that followed were long and heavy. I sat on the edge of the bed, the indentations of his fingers still visible on my skin, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. I couldn't understand where his sudden doubt had stemmed from. Had I missed signs of his insecurities before this? My thoughts spiraled, touching each memory, trying to find evidence of mistrust I might have overlooked. When Michael finally returned, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the room that seemed to echo the darkness settling between us. I knew we needed to talk, to clear the air, or the gap that had opened up would only widen. "I want to talk about earlier," I started as soon as I saw him. He nodded, his face weary, his usual bright eyes dimmed. We sat down together, the space on the couch between us feeling like a gulf. "Do you have any reason not to trust me, or do you need reassurance or more attention in our relationship?" I asked, my voice soft but firm. It was crucial to understand his perspective, even if his suspicions had hurt me deeply. He stayed silent for a long time, his eyes not meeting mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "No, but those marks. They don't make sense," he admitted, sounding as confused as he was uncertain. Trying to bridge the distance between us, I offered. "You can go through my phone whenever you want to," hoping transparency would reassure him. "Maybe you should talk to one of your friends about it," I added, thinking that perhaps external support might help him process his feelings better than I could alone. But he didn't like that suggestion. His face closed off, and he stood abruptly. "I don't need to talk to anyone," he said sharply, then stormed off to the other room, leaving me once again alone, the weight of our unresolved conflict pressing down on me like a physical force. We had not spoken since. As the door slammed shut behind Michael, the sharp sound seemed to cleave the air, leaving a palpable silence that settled heavily around me. Left alone in the diminishing light of the evening, I felt a cold draft sweep through the room, as if the open window was allowing the chill from outside to seep into the apartment, and into the spaces between us. In the quiet that followed, my mind began to whirl with thoughts and emotions. Shock was the first to settle in, thick and suffocating. I never imagined that Michael, the person I trusted most in the world, could suggest, even indirectly, that I might be unfaithful. The absurdity of his accusation that my stretch marks were scratches from someone else's nails was bewildering. Confusion followed close behind the shock. Why would Michael think such a thing? We had always been open with each other, sharing our thoughts and feelings without hesitation. This level of mistrust was new, alien. I replayed our conversation in my head, his words echoing, "They don't look like stretch marks." And I could feel a tinge of frustration bubbling inside me. How could he not trust my words? Sitting on the edge of our bed, the dim light of the bedside lamp casting long shadows across the room, I allowed my mind to drift to previous instances that might have hinted at this sudden burst of jealousy. There was that time at a company party when I had laughed a little too long at a coworker's joke, and I noticed Michael's eyes narrow across the room. Or when he had asked, with a thinly veiled tension, who I was texting late one evening when it was only my sister sharing updates about her new baby. Each memory, each little moment I could recall, seemed now like a thread in a larger tapestry I had not seen the whole of. Was there always an undercurrent of doubt that I had failed to notice? Or was this insecurity something new, something brought on by circumstances I could not understand? Feeling overwhelmed, I reached for my phone. I dialed my best friend, Sarah, needing the comfort of her voice, the reassurance of her perspective. She answered on the second ring, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "Hey, what's up? You sound upset," she said, her tone immediately shifting to concern. I poured out the events of the day, my words tumbling out in a rush. As I spoke, I could hear Sarah's steady breathing on the other end of the line, a reminder of the calm I was desperately seeking. "That sounds really tough, but you know, Michael might just be going through something he's not ready to talk about," Sarah offered, always the voice of reason. "But it's also important that he knows he can't project his insecurities onto you." Her words were rational, but they only provided a small comfort against the torrent of emotions I felt. After we hung up, the loneliness crept back, heavier than before. The anxiety started to set in then, gnawing at the edges of my mind. What if Michael's doubts had roots deeper than just the misunderstandings of today? What if these seeds of mistrust grew into something more, something that could not be mended? The thought made my heart race, and I felt a profound sadness at the potential loss of something so dear. I felt misunderstood, isolated in my own relationship. It was as if Michael and I were suddenly speaking different languages, unable to understand each other's words, let alone our feelings. The realization was crushing. The emotional toll was more exhausting than I had anticipated. Sleep eluded me as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows seeming to mock my distress. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's tearful eyes, heard the disbelief in his voice, felt the growing distance between us. The sadness was a heavy cloak I couldn't seem to shed, and I missed him terribly, even though he was just in the next room. As dawn broke, the first light of morning casting a pale glow into the room, I knew something had to change. I couldn't let this misunderstanding fester and poison what we had built together. But as I prepared to face the day, to face Michael, the weight of uncertainty was a constant companion, making each step feel like wading through treacle. The house felt silent and cold when Michael finally came back. It was as if his departure had taken the warmth with him, and now his return brought back not the comfort of his presence, but the shadow of our unresolved issues. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to be absorbed in a book, but really, my mind had been racing with thoughts about our conversation, about his accusations, and about the future of our relationship. When I heard the door open, my heart skipped. I closed the book and stood up, smoothing my sweater, not sure what to expect. Would he apologize? Or would he continue to doubt me? The uncertainty was gnawing at me. "Michael," I called out as he entered the kitchen. He paused, his eyes meeting mine briefly before looking away. He looked tired. His usual bright eyes were clouded with something I couldn't quite decipher. Frustration, confusion, sorrow. "We need to talk," I said, my voice more steady than I felt. He nodded silently, hanging his coat on the rack and reluctantly joining me at the table. We sat across from each other, the tension thick in the air. "Michael, I want to understand why you felt the way you did today," I began, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Do you have any reasons to distrust me, or is there something else that's bothering you? Do you need more reassurance or more attention from me in our relationship?" He looked at his hands for a long moment before responding. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "I don't know, it's just, those marks, They caught me off guard. I trust you, but I couldn't make sense of them. They don't look like what I thought stretch marks looked like. I listened quietly, keeping my emotions in check. I understand that it was unexpected, but you know I've been trying to gain weight. The doctor said rapid weight gain could cause stretch marks like these. But something had shifted in Michael. Instead of acknowledging the explanation, his face darkened, and his words became harsh, sharp like shards of glass. No, this doesn't make sense. Who have you been with? He shouted, his voice escalating as he began to list names. Male colleagues, friends, even distant acquaintances. Each name felt like an accusation, a wound. I stood there, stunned into silence for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Michael, stop. Why would you say those things? Tears began to form, blurring my vision as I heard him continue. Not just questioning my fidelity, but now attacking my profession. He didn't stop there. His anger spilled over to everything connected to me. My friends, my parents. And what about your so-called supportive friends? What role do they play in this? He spat out, each word laced with venom. I felt my own anger rising, hot and fierce. How dare you? I cried out, my voice cracking. The hurt was overwhelming. I was shaking, sobbing loudly, the tears streaming down my face. But he seemed lost to his rage, unable to see the pain he was inflicting, his suspicions spiraling out of control. The apartment, our home, felt like it was closing in on me, the walls echoing with the destructive force of his accusations. I watched, heartbroken, as he swept his arm across the coffee table, sending books and small trinkets crashing to the floor. His behavior was unlike anything I had ever seen from him. It scared me, seeing him like this, consumed by baseless jealousy. Michael, please, this isn't you. I pleaded between sobs, trying to reach out to him, to pull him back from the edge of this rage-filled precipice. But he was beyond my reach, his words slicing through the last threads of my composure. Finally, I couldn't bear it any longer. If you can't trust me, if you can't respect me, then what are we even doing? I shouted, my voice hoarse from crying. You need help, Michael, but so do I. We can't go on like this. Silence fell as my words hung in the air. He stopped, his chest heaving, looking around at the chaos he had caused, at the woman he claimed to love now crying uncontrollably because of his actions. It seemed to dawn on him then, the gravity of what had just unfolded between us. The moment was a painful wake-up call, a stark revelation of how deeply our trust had been eroded and how much healing would be necessary if there was any hope for us to move forward. Whether that path would be one we could walk together remained to be seen. The update. As I sat alone in the dim light of our living room, the shadows seemed to stretch across the walls, mirroring the darkening thoughts swirling in my mind. The echoes of Michael's angry words hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the storm that had just passed. He had stormed out again, leaving behind a silence that was thick with unrest and sorrow. This wasn't the first time jealousy had reared its ugly head in our relationship, but tonight, it had turned into sheer madness. Over the past year, I had noticed a troubling pattern in Michael's behavior. It started with small, seemingly insignificant comments about how I dressed for work or the occasional coffee with a friend. But gradually, these comments had morphed into accusations, heated arguments that would end in his tearful apologies and promises to change. Each time I believed him, hoping our love was strong enough to overcome these bouts of insecurity. But as I replayed those moments now, a chilling realization washed over me. It was getting worse, not better. Tonight had been different. The intensity of his anger, the sharpness of his words, everything was magnified. He hadn't just been upset or confused, he had been furious. Destructive. The apartment bore the physical marks of his rage. With shattered glass from a picture frame we had picked out together last Christmas lying scattered across the floor like fragments of our once happy memories. As I gathered the broken pieces, my mind raced with questions and fears about our future. Could I continue living like this, walking on eggshells, always anxious about what might set him off next? Was love really supposed to be this hard, this painful? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door. Michael was back, his face pale and his eyes red-rimmed from crying. He looked broken, remorseful. For a moment, my heart ached for him, for us. But then I remembered the fear, the feeling of helplessness as he had yelled and thrown things around, accusing me of betraying him over innocuous stretch marks that were merely the result of my efforts to be healthier. We need to talk, I said firmly as he stepped closer, his expression one of contrition. I know, I'm so sorry, he stammered, his voice cracking. I don't know what got into me. It's just, seeing those marks, it scared me. I thought I was losing you. His words pierced me with a sadness so deep it was almost physical. Michael, Your jealousy isn't new. It's been building up, and every time, it chips away a little more of my trust, my sense of safety with you. I love you, but I can't live like this. We can't keep going through these cycles. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know I need help. I'll do anything. See a therapist. Anything you need. Please. Don't give up on us. But as much as I wanted to believe him, the fear of what might happen if we stayed together haunted me. What if his jealousy turned even more destructive? What if next time, he didn't just break things but broke us beyond repair? I need to think, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need some space to figure out what's best for us, for me. I'm scared, Michael. I'm scared of what you might do, what you might think of me. That you might believe I betrayed you even if we just break up. He looked devastated, but he nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Okay, I'll stay at my brother's tonight. Take all the time you need, he replied, his tone resigned. After he left, the silence returned, but now it was a silence of solitude, not of anticipation. I pondered over everything, our love, the good times we had shared, and the darkness that had slowly enveloped us. I wondered if ending things would lead him to think I had someone else, if it would prompt him to do something drastic out of a misguided sense of betrayal. The decision lay heavily on me. Continuing as we were was untenable, but the implications of ending things were frightening in their own right. Either choice carried its own set of fears and potential regrets. I realized then that the most immediate need was not just deciding whether to stay or leave, but ensuring both our safeties, emotional and physical. Perhaps a mediated conversation with a therapist present, or a clear safety plan, would be the first steps. Ending a relationship scared me, but continuing in fear scared me more. As the night deepened, so did my resolve. Tomorrow I would call a counselor, someone who could guide us through this, whether it ended in reconciliation or separation. But tonight, I would allow myself to grieve. The loss of the relationship I thought we had. The future I had imagined, and the peace I so desperately craved. After we divorced, my best friend said she loved me. How I struggled to preserve our friendship amid military demands. My name is Jack, and I am a 40-year-old military man who has seen more of the world than most, and more of life's hardships than I care to remember. If you looked at my life from a distance, you might see a successful career and a well-disciplined individual. However, if you looked closer, you would see the scars, both physical and emotional, that tell the true story of my journey. One constant throughout this tumultuous journey has been my best friend Sarah. Our bond, forged in the fires of youthful ambition and tempered by the trials of adult life, has been a source of strength and solace for both of us. Sarah and I met during our freshman year at college, back when the world seemed full of endless possibilities and our biggest concerns were passing exams and finding the best coffee on campus. She was an aspiring writer, her head always buried in a book or her fingers flying across the keys of her laptop as she crafted stories that were as vibrant and full of life as she was. I, on the other hand, was a latecomer to the military dream, still weighing my options and trying to soak up as much civilian life as I could before committing to a career that would take me far from the familiar. Our friendship began in the most unremarkable way. Seated next to each other in an early morning psychology class that neither of us particularly enjoyed. We bonded over our shared disdain for the ungodly hour and our mutual need for black coffee to kickstart our brains. From there, our friendship blossomed. We became inseparable, spending countless hours studying together, attending parties, and sharing our deepest fears and ambitions. Sarah had a way of seeing through my tough exterior, and I found comfort in her unwavering belief in me, even when I doubted myself. When I decided to enlist, it was Sarah who encouraged me, even though she knew it meant we would see less of each other. She understood my need to serve and supported my decision wholeheartedly. Her letters, filled with mundane details of her day-to-day life and snippets of her latest stories, were a lifeline during the grueling months of basic training. They reminded me of the world outside the barracks, a world where someone cared deeply for me and believed in my potential. As the years passed, our lives took different paths, but our friendship remained constant. I married young, caught up in a whirlwind romance with a woman named Lisa. Lisa was vibrant, adventurous, and seemed to understand the demands of a military life better than anyone else I'd met. We met through mutual friends, and our connection was immediate. We were drawn to each other's intensity and the promise of adventure. Lisa and I didn't have children, partly due to the uncertainty and instability of my military career. We both agreed early on that bringing a child into such a tumultuous lifestyle wasn't fair. At first our relationship thrived on the excitement of our shared adventures and the thrill of our romance. However, the reality of long deployments and the strain of constant separation soon took its toll. Being apart for months at a time created a distance between us that grew with each passing year. While Lisa was supportive and understanding at first, the loneliness and isolation began to wear on her. She had her own dreams and ambitions, and waiting for me to come home wasn't part of the plan she envisioned for herself. For my part, I found solace and purpose in my work, but each return home felt more alien. The woman I had married was still there, but the connection that had once bound us had frayed beyond repair. Our marriage ended in a quiet, mutual agreement. We sat down one evening after I had returned from a particularly grueling deployment and had an honest conversation. Both of us acknowledged that we were better off apart. There were no dramatic fights or bitter accusations, just a somber understanding that our paths had diverged too far to ever converge again. The love we once shared had been eroded by time and distance, leaving behind a respectful but irrevocable separation. After the breakup, I was not sad but relieved. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a burden of trying to maintain a relationship that had long since lost its spark. The constant worry about Lisa's well-being and her growing dissatisfaction had been a source of constant stress. Now, with the relationship behind me, I could focus entirely on my career without the nagging guilt of leaving someone behind. It was a bittersweet freedom. I mourned the loss of what could have been but felt liberated from the constraints of a partnership that no longer fit either of us. In the aftermath, I poured myself into my work, finding solace in the structure and purpose the military provided. Yet, despite the relief, there was an underlying sense of skepticism about love and its promises. The experience left me wary, hesitant to dive into another relationship that might end the same way. I became more guarded, cautious of letting anyone get too close, fearing the same cycle of excitement, distance, and eventual disintegration. Through all this, Sarah remained a constant in my life. She was the one person I could confide in, the one who knew me better than anyone else. She listened without judgment, offering comfort and understanding as I navigated the emotional aftermath of my divorce. Our friendship was a safe harbor, a place where I could be vulnerable without fear. Little did I know that this unwavering bond would soon be tested in ways neither of us could have anticipated. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed to have found her own fairy tale. She married Mark, a fellow writer she met at a literary workshop. Mark was charming, witty, and seemed to understand Sarah's passion for storytelling better than anyone else. Their wedding was a picturesque event, celebrated in a garden surrounded by friends and family. They settled into a cozy home filled with books, laughter, and the promise of a happily ever after. They had 3 beautiful children, and their life seemed like the perfect story Sarah had always dreamed of writing. But as the years went by, the cracks in their perfect facade began to show. It started subtly, with Mark's criticisms about Sarah's writing and parenting choices. He would dismiss her stories as trivial and question her decisions with the children, undermining her confidence at every turn. His charming exterior masked a cruel and controlling nature that slowly eroded Sarah's spirit. Late one night, I received a call from Sarah. Her voice trembled as she confided in me the true extent of her suffering. Mark had become a tyrant, subjecting her and the children to emotional and physical abuse. He belittled her dreams, calling her writing worthless and accusing her of being a terrible mother. He isolated her from friends and family, making her feel alone and trapped in her own home. Sarah described nights filled with fear, where Mark's temper would flare over the smallest perceived slight. He would yell and throw things, his rage unpredictable and terrifying. The children would hide in their rooms, scared and confused, while Sarah tried to shield them from the worst of it. She spoke of bruises hidden beneath long sleeves and a heart weighed down by constant dread. Mark's control was absolute. He monitored her phone calls, restricted her movements, and ensured she had no access to money or resources to escape. The breaking point came when Mark's abuse escalated to a physical assault that left Sarah with a broken rib and a resolve to protect her children at all costs. She described the night she gathered the courage to leave, sneaking out in the dead of night with her kids, a few essential belongings, and the hope of finding safety. She found refuge in a shelter for abused women, where she finally felt a semblance of security. The divorce that followed was a brutal and painful process. Mark fought for custody, using every tactic to intimidate and manipulate Sarah. The legal battles were long and exhausting, draining her both financially and emotionally. Despite the scars, both visible and hidden, Sarah emerged from the ordeal determined to rebuild her life for the sake of her children. As she told me her story, I felt a deep sorrow for her. Sarah had always been strong and resilient, but this experience had left her vulnerable and broken. I remembered the vibrant, passionate woman I had fallen for in college, and it pained me to see her so worn down. My heart ached for her and her children, who had endured so much pain at the hands of a man who should have cherished them. Sarah's depression was palpable. She spoke of sleepless nights, haunted by memories of Mark's cruelty, and days where the weight of it all seemed too much to bear. Her once bright eyes were now shadowed with sadness, and the spark of creativity that had defined her seemed dimmed. She expressed a profound loneliness, a need for love and support from those around her. She felt lost and overwhelmed, struggling to navigate a new reality without the safety net of her former life. I found myself feeling not just sorry for Sarah, but a deep sense of responsibility and a renewed surge of the feelings I had once harbored for her. She needed more than just a friend. She needed someone who could offer her the love and security that had been so cruelly stripped away. I wanted to be that person for her, to help her heal and rebuild her life, but the complexities of our situations made it difficult. Sarah's story reignited a protectiveness within me. I wanted to be there for her, to provide the emotional support she so desperately needed. I felt a fierce determination to help her find her way back to the vibrant, strong woman she had once been. Yet the constraints of my military life and her obligations as a mother made the path ahead uncertain and fraught with challenges. As I sat in my quarters, reflecting on everything Sarah had endured, I knew that our bond was more important than ever. She needed to know she wasn't alone, that someone cared deeply for her and her children. I vowed to support her in any way I could, even if it meant putting my own feelings aside. Sarah deserved happiness and love, and I was determined to help her find it, no matter how long it took or how difficult the journey might be. The day I received Sarah's call, detailing the horrific reality of her marriage and subsequent divorce, I knew I had to see her. It was impossible to offer her the support she needed over the phone. I needed to be there, in person, to provide any comfort and strength I could. I took leave from my duties, something I rarely did, because this was too important. The anticipation of seeing Sarah again, under such dire circumstances, filled me with a mixture of anxiety and determination. As I packed my bags, I was flooded with memories of our time together in college. I remembered the countless nights we stayed up talking, the coffee dates, and the unspoken bond that had always existed between us. I was anxious about seeing her, knowing the pain she had endured and the scars it had left. Yet I was also filled with a sense of purpose. Sarah needed me, and I was determined to be there for her. The journey to her home state felt like an eternity. I replayed our conversations in my mind, trying to prepare myself for what I might find. I was worried about her, about the toll the abuse and the divorce had taken on her and the kids. As the plane touched down, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the emotional reunion. I arrived at her house in the early afternoon. It was a modest, cozy place, much like the home she had described to me in her letters and phone calls. As I approached the door, my heart raced. I rang the bell, and within moments, the door swung open. There she stood. Sarah, looking both familiar and heartbreakingly different. She looked tired, worn down by the struggles she had faced. Her once vibrant eyes were now shadowed with a sadness that cut me to the core. Yet, there was still a spark of the Sarah I knew. The strength and resilience that had always defined her. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a casual outfit. But there was an elegance to her that no amount of hardship could diminish. "Jack," she said, her voice a mix of relief and emotion. We stood there for a moment, just taking each other in, before she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I held her tightly, feeling the weight of everything she had been through in the way she clung to me. We spent the first few hours catching up, easing into more lighthearted topics. We reminisced about our college days, laughing at old memories and the silly things we used to do. It was comforting to slip back into that familiar rhythm, to remember the carefree days when our biggest concerns were exams and weekend plans. But as the day turned into evening, the conversation naturally shifted to more serious topics. Sarah opened up about the extent of the abuse she had endured. She told me about the nights filled with fear, the constant belittlement, and the physical violence that had become a part of her daily life. Her voice trembled as she recounted these experiences, and I could see the pain etched into her features. "I felt so trapped, Jack," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "There were days when I thought I wouldn't make it through. But I had to stay strong for the kids. They needed me." I listened, my heart breaking for her. I wanted to reach out and hold her, to take away all her pain, but I knew there was only so much I could do. Still, being there, listening, and offering my support felt like a small step in the right direction. Over the next few days, we fell into a comfortable routine. We would spend the mornings talking, sharing coffee, and helping her with whatever tasks needed to be done around the house. Afternoons were spent with her kids, who were slowly starting to open up to me. Evenings were a time for reflection, where Sarah and I would sit on her porch, talking about everything and nothing, enjoying the peace of each other's company. It was during one of these quiet evenings that the atmosphere began to shift. We had been talking about our college days, laughing at some of the antics we got up to, when Sarah's expression grew more serious. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting slightly, and I could sense there was something she wanted to say but was struggling to find the words. "Jack," she began, her voice hesitant. "There's something I need to tell you." I turned to her, giving her my full attention. What is it, Sarah? She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of hope and fear. I love you, Jack. I always have. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. I could see the tears streaming down her face, the raw emotion in her eyes. My mind raced, trying to process what she had just said. In another life, under different circumstances, her confession might have been the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. But the reality of our situations made things far more complicated. Sarah, I said softly, reaching out to take her hand. I care about you so much. You mean the world to me. But you've been through so much, and I'm not sure this is the right time for you to make such a decision. She looked at me, a mixture of desperation and longing in her eyes. I know it's a lot, Jack. But I've never been more certain of anything. You've always been there for me, and I can't imagine my life without you. I squeezed her hand gently. I understand, but you need to take time to heal. You've been hurt so badly, and I don't want you to make a decision based on your need for comfort right now. You deserve more than that. You deserve a relationship that's built on more than just the aftermath of pain. She nodded slowly, tears still falling. I just don't want to be alone. I need someone to be there for me, to protect me. I will always be here for you, Sarah, I promised. But we need to take this slow. Let's focus on helping you and the kids heal first. We can talk about us when you're in a better place. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded again, a hint of a smile breaking through her tears. Okay, Jack. I trust you. We sat there for a while longer, holding hands and watching the stars come out. The tension that had built up over the past few days seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of understanding and mutual respect. We knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but we also knew that we would face it together, no matter what. As my visit drew to a close, the reality of our separation began to set in. We spent our last day together trying to make the most of our time, but there was an unspoken sadness between us. When it was finally time for me to leave, we stood on her porch, holding each other tightly. Take care of yourself, Sarah, I said, my voice thick with emotion. And take care of those kids. You're stronger than you know. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I will, Jack, and you take care of yourself too. Come back to us when you can. I will, I promised, pulling her into one last hug. I'll be in touch. We'll get through this, I promise. As I walked away, I felt a mix of emotions, sadness, hope, and a determination to do whatever I could to support Sarah from afar. Our friendship had always been a source of strength for both of us, and I knew that no matter what the future held, we would find a way to navigate it together. The journey ahead was uncertain, but with Sarah in my life, I knew I could face whatever came next. Returning to my base, I found myself consumed by thoughts of Sarah and the impossible situation we found ourselves in. The days were long and filled with routine duties, but my mind was constantly drifting back to the moments we shared during my visit. The sound of her laughter, the touch of her hand, and the weight of her confession played on a loop in my head. I had hoped that seeing her would bring clarity, but instead, it had only intensified my confusion and worry. Our conversations, once easy and light, became strained as we navigated the new dynamic between us. In the past, we had been able to talk about anything and everything without hesitation. Now every word felt loaded with unspoken emotions and unresolved issues. I could sense the tension in her voice during our phone calls, and I knew she felt the same from my end. I tried to explain the complexities of my life to her, hoping she would understand the barriers that stood between us. Sarah, my life is unpredictable, I told her one evening, pacing the small confines of my quarters. The constant relocations, the secrecy of my missions, and the ever-present danger. It's not a life I would wish on anyone, especially not someone I care about as much as I care about you. She listened quietly, her silence a stark contrast to the lively exchanges we once had. I understand, Jack, she said finally, her voice soft. But at least I'd get to see you a bit, and if it was for even a year or two, I'd be okay. Her words broke my heart because I knew she was speaking from a place of deep loneliness and a desperate need for safety and love. She had endured so much, and I wanted nothing more than to be the one to make it all better. But I knew, deep down, that I couldn't provide the stability and security she and her children needed. Sarah, you deserve more than I can offer, I said, struggling to keep my emotions in check. You need someone who can be there for you and the kids, someone who can provide the kind of stability you all need. But I don't care about stability right now, Jack, she replied, her voice rising with frustration. I just want to feel safe and loved. I just want to be with you. The desperation in her voice was palpable, and it tore at my heart. I wanted to tell her that I felt the same, that I wished for nothing more than to be with her. But the reality of our situations made that impossible. I couldn't ask her to live a life of uncertainty and fear, constantly wondering where I was and if I would come back. As the days turned into weeks, our communications dwindled to quick, "How are you?" messages, neither of us knowing how to bridge the gap that had formed between us. The easy rapport we once had was replaced by a strained politeness, and every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. We both avoided the elephant in the room, the unspoken feelings that had complicated our friendship. The distance, both physical and emotional, grew. And I feared that I was losing my best friend. The woman who had pulled me out of some of my darkest moments was now the source of my greatest inner turmoil. I missed the simplicity of our old conversations, the way we could talk for hours about everything and nothing. Now, every interaction was tinged with the weight of what we weren't saying. In the quiet moments, when I was alone in my quarters, I would replay our conversations in my mind, trying to find a way to make things right. I knew she was struggling too, dealing with the aftermath of her divorce and trying to rebuild her life for the sake of her children. I wanted to be there for her, to support her in any way I could, but the limitations of my career made that almost impossible. The guilt of not being able to give her what she needed weighed heavily on me. I had always been the one she could rely on, the one who was there for her no matter what. Now, I felt like I was failing her when she needed me the most. It was a cruel twist of fate that the one time she needed me to be present and stable, I was more transient and unpredictable than ever. I began to fear that our friendship might not survive this test. The thought of losing Sarah, the one person who truly understood me, was almost too much to bear. She had been my anchor through so many storms, and now I felt adrift without her. I clung to the hope that we would find a way to navigate this new terrain, but with each passing day, that hope seemed to slip further away. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I sat down to write her a letter. I poured my heart into it, trying to explain how much she meant to me and how desperately I wanted to find a way to be there for her. I told her about the guilt and the fear, the longing and the hope. But as I read it over, I realized that words alone wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap between us. The complexities of our lives required more than heartfelt letters and late-night phone calls. Despite the challenges, I knew I couldn't give up on our friendship. Sarah was too important to me. I resolved to keep trying, to find a way to support her even from a distance. I reminded myself that true friendship could withstand even the most daunting obstacles, and I clung to that belief as I faced each new day. As the weeks turned into months, we both adjusted to our new normal. Our conversations, though still strained, became more frequent as we found a way to navigate the complexities of our feelings. We learned to focus on the positives, to cherish the moments we could share, even if they were few and far between. Slowly, the tension began to ease, and the warmth of our old friendship started to return. I continued to remind Sarah that she deserved the best, that she needed to focus on healing and providing a stable environment for her children. She began to see a therapist, something I had encouraged from the beginning, and I could hear the difference it made in her voice. She sounded stronger, more hopeful, and that gave me a sense of peace. Our friendship, though tested by fire, emerged stronger. We both understood that the love and respect we had for each other were worth fighting for. We learned to accept the limitations of our circumstances, and to appreciate the connection that had sustained us through so many trials. In the end, it wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough. We had each other, even if from a distance, and that was a comfort neither of us could take for granted. Our bond, forged in the fires of youth and tempered by the trials of adulthood, proved resilient and enduring. And as we faced the uncertain future, we did so with the knowledge that we could weather any storm as long as we had each other. Update. There are some things I left out of my previous recounting, and I feel it's important to address them to provide a clearer picture of my situation and the feelings involved. Do you love her or not? Yes, I love Sarah. Not just as a friend, but deeply and profoundly. She is the only person I can truly open up to, sharing my most vulnerable feelings without fear of judgment. When we first met, I developed feelings for her almost immediately, and fell hard. I remember the day I confessed my feelings to her vividly. She gently told me she had a boyfriend, who later became her husband and now ex-husband. Heartbroken, I backed off and for a couple of years, we didn't speak. Life went on, but those feelings never completely faded. Looking back, I often wonder how different my life might have been if we had gotten together back then. I think I would have been much happier, and perhaps she would have been spared some of the pain she endured in her marriage. Bro, you're 40, aren't you retiring from the military? I joined the military later than most, which means I still have some years left before I can retire. I recently re-upped and have another 5 years on my current contract. For those who are curious, I'm trying to stay as anonymous as possible, so I won't disclose my branch of service. The military has been my life for so long, And while it has its rewards, it also brings with it a significant number of challenges, especially when it comes to personal relationships. How do you ever expect to have a relationship given your situation? The issues surrounding a potential relationship with Sarah are incredibly complicated. She just got divorced and has alimony and child support to consider. Additionally, she is barred from cohabitation and cannot leave her home state due to custody arrangements. If these restrictions weren't in place, it might be easier for us to consider a future together. I could potentially move her and her kids to wherever I'm stationed stateside. But even then, the unpredictable nature of my job means I'd often have to leave her and the children behind, creating a life of uncertainty. Especially with her wound still fresh, I don't want to add to her stress or make her life more complicated. The lifestyle of a military man is not easy for most women to accept. There are long deployments, missed holidays, and the constant risk associated with my job. While there are women within the military community who understand this, forming a relationship within the same environment brings its own set of challenges and complications. I call BS, this isn't real because XYZ. Believe what you will, but this is my reality. One of my biggest fears is something happening to me and Sarah not being informed. I have no immediate family left, my parents passed away, and my brother recently died. If something were to happen to me, Sarah might not be notified because we wouldn't be able to marry until her alimony runs out. While I could use the "it's classified" excuse to avoid lying about my whereabouts, I still feel that withholding information would be a betrayal of her trust. When I went to visit Sarah, I might have overdone it. I wanted to make her feel special and appreciated after everything she had been through. Her ex-husband treated her so horribly, and I felt she deserved to be taken out and treated well. I took her to nice restaurants, bought her thoughtful gifts, and we spent a lot of time together. I wanted to show her that she deserved to be loved and cherished, but in doing so, I might have sent mixed signals. During my visit, we ended up hooking up. It was a moment of weakness on my part, and while I don't regret being with her, I regret the emotional turmoil it caused her. We had been caught up in the moment, and it felt right at the time. Sarah later told me she had expected it to happen and that she enjoyed every moment. However, she didn't anticipate how it would make her feel afterwards. She repeatedly assured me that she doesn't normally do things like this, but she felt completely safe with me, and it was a very special experience for her. In hindsight, I realized that not restraining myself contributed to her emotional pain. We talked about it, and she said it was fine, but I could see the lingering effects it had on her. She felt even more attached and conflicted, and I hated myself for being part of the reason she was hurting. Sarah deserved someone who could be there for her fully, someone who could offer stability and support, and I wasn't in a position to provide that. Since returning to my base, I've tried to maintain our friendship, but it's been challenging. Our conversations, once easy and natural, have become strained and awkward. The dynamic between us has shifted, and I fear that we may never get back to where we were. The woman who has been my rock and my confidant is now the source of my greatest inner turmoil. I feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility to protect her, but I am limited by my circumstances. As time goes on, I hope that Sarah finds the peace and stability she deserves. I will always be there for her, even if it's from a distance. Our bond is strong, and I believe it can withstand even this. But for now, I must focus on my duties and trust that we will find a way to navigate this complex and challenging situation together. My husband let his brother propose at our wedding after I said no and is now asking for forgiveness. What should I do? I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the delicate lace veil that cascaded down my back. The sun streamed through the window, casting a golden glow over the room. My heart fluttered with excitement and nerves. Today was the day I would marry Liam, my sweet, kind-hearted Liam. The man who had shown me nothing but love and support since the day we met. The ceremony was held in a quaint chapel, adorned with white roses and twinkling fairy lights. As I walked down the aisle, my heart swelled with joy. The look in Liam's eyes as he watched me approach made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. The vows we exchanged were heartfelt and genuine, filled with promises of love and commitment. It was a perfect ceremony, the kind of day I had always dreamed of. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception venue, a beautiful garden with lush greenery and colorful blooms. The scent of roses and jasmine filled the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and music. Our families and friends gathered to celebrate our union, and the atmosphere was filled with joy and love. It was everything I had hoped for and more. Liam and I made our rounds, greeting guests and thanking them for sharing this special day with us. Liam's older brother, Ben, was there too, of course. He was Liam's best man, and while I appreciated his presence, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I always had around him. Ben was difficult. He tried too hard to be funny, often making jokes that fell flat or were outright inappropriate. He craved attention, always wanting to be the center of it. He reminded me of Screech from Saved by the Bell, but 10 times more annoying. Despite my reservations about Ben, I had always tried to be polite and cordial. I knew he had a difficult childhood. When Liam was diagnosed with high-functioning autism, their parents lavished attention on him, leaving Ben feeling neglected. As a result, Ben acted out during their teenage years, getting into trouble and demanding their parents' attention. This dynamic persisted into adulthood, with their parents often siding with Ben, even when he was in the wrong. Liam, ever the people-pleaser, never spoke up for himself. He just wanted to keep the peace. 4 weeks before the wedding, we were having dinner with Liam's parents and Ben. It was a pleasant evening, filled with laughter and discussions about our future plans. Ben seemed unusually excited, and it wasn't long before he revealed why. "I've been thinking about proposing to Melody," he announced, a wide grin on his face. "Oh, that's wonderful," Liam's mother exclaimed. "How do you plan to do it?" Ben turned to Liam with a mischievous glint in his eye. "I was hoping to do it at the reception." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. "You do that, and my brothers will throw you out of the venue." But Ben didn't laugh. He looked offended, and that's when I realized he was serious. Before I could say anything, Liam, ever the accommodating brother, said, "Of course you can, Melody will love it." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I touched Liam's arm gently and said, "We'll talk about it later." He looked confused but nodded. After dinner, I pulled Liam aside. "Liam, we need to talk about Ben's proposal." "What about it?" he asked, still puzzled. "It's in bad taste, Liam. A wedding day is supposed to be about the bride and groom. Having someone else propose takes away from that. It's not fair to us or to our guests." Liam's face fell. "I didn't think of it that way. I just wanted to make Ben happy." "I know," I said softly. "But this is our day. How about we help Ben plan a special party for his proposal instead? It would be more memorable and appropriate." Liam's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. I'll talk to Ben." Relieved, I thought the matter was settled. Liam spoke to Ben and explained our plan. Ben seemed to agree, and I felt a sense of calm returning. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of final preparations and excitement. Yet I couldn't shake the lingering worry about Ben's proposal. I trusted Liam, but I knew how easily influenced he could be, especially when it came to his family. Liam's struggle was evident. He wanted to make everyone happy, a trait that I loved and sometimes found frustrating. He adored his brother and wanted to support him, but he also knew how important our wedding day was to me. It was a delicate balance, and I could see the stress wearing on him. One evening, as we sat together planning the final details, Liam sighed heavily. "I'm just worried about Ben. He's been acting strange since we talked about the proposal." I looked at him, concern etched on my face. "What do you mean?" "He's been distant and moody. I think he's upset that we're not letting him propose at the wedding." "Liam, this is our day," I reminded him gently. "We've already offered to help him plan something special. He needs to respect that." Liam nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He was caught between his love for me and his loyalty to his brother, and it was tearing him apart. As the wedding day approached, the pressure from Liam's family intensified. His parents, who had always favored Ben, were relentless in their subtle yet persistent efforts to convince Liam to change his mind. At a family gathering a week before the wedding, his mother cornered him. "Liam, you know how much this means to Ben. Can't you talk to her again? It's just a proposal after all." Liam sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom, we've already discussed this. It's not appropriate to propose at someone else's wedding. But think about how happy it would make him. Don't you want your brother to be happy?" "I do, but not at the expense of our wedding day," Liam insisted. His father chimed in. "Son, sometimes you need to compromise. Marriage is about making sacrifices, right?" I watched the exchange from a distance, my heart aching for Liam. I knew he was struggling, and the pressure from his parents wasn't helping. I decided it was time to step in. I approached them, my voice calm but firm. "We've already made a compromise by offering to help Ben plan a special proposal event. This is our wedding day, and we want it to be about us." His mother pursed her lips, clearly unhappy with my intervention, but she didn't argue further. I took Liam's hand and led him away, hoping to ease some of the tension. Determined to find a solution that would satisfy everyone, I reached out to Ben directly. We met at a cafe, and I could tell he was still upset about not being able to propose at the wedding. "Ben, I understand that you want to make your proposal special," I began, trying to keep my tone empathetic. "But our wedding day isn't the right time or place for it. We've already offered to help you plan a separate event. It will be more personal and meaningful for you and Melody." Ben sighed, running a hand through his hair. I get that. But I've been planning this for months. I wanted it to be a big surprise. And it can still be a surprise, I assured him. We can create a beautiful event where you can propose. Melody will appreciate the thought and effort you put into making it special for her. He looked at me, a mix of frustration and resignation in his eyes. Fine. We'll do it your way. Relieved, I thought the matter was finally resolved. I informed Liam of our conversation, and he seemed more at ease. We focused on the final preparations for the wedding, hoping that everything would go smoothly. The wedding day arrived, and everything went off without a hitch. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception lively and joyous. As the evening progressed, it was time for the speeches. Ben, as the best man, was up first. He started with a series of awkward jokes and puns that made the guests chuckle politely. I tried to focus on the positive, appreciating the effort he was putting into it. Part of his speech involved moving around the tables, engaging the guests directly. I should have known something was up, but in the spirit of the day, I chose to ignore the red flags. As Ben neared the end of his speech, he stopped in front of Melody. My heart sank as I saw him reach into his pocket. Time seemed to slow as he dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring. Melody, will you marry me? The garden fell silent, all eyes on Ben and Melody. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could he do this? How could he ignore our agreement and hijack our special day? I couldn't stay there. I couldn't watch as the attention shifted from our celebration to Ben's proposal. Without a word, I turned and stormed out of the reception. My vision blurred with tears, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my mother. Are you okay? She asked gently. I just need a moment, I choked out. Liam came running after me, his face a mix of panic and regret. I'm so sorry, he pleaded. They told me it'd be fine. They pressured me and I didn't want to upset you. I shook my head, too hurt to respond. My mother offered to drive me home and I accepted. As we left, I told Liam, don't call me, I'll call you. Update. A few days after the wedding, the events were still a whirlwind in my mind, each memory tainted with the sharp sting of betrayal. The day that should have been solely ours was overshadowed by an act that spoke of selfishness and disrespect. In an attempt to seek some closure or perhaps a flicker of understanding, I agreed to meet Ben alone. It was a chilly afternoon, the overcast sky mirroring the gloom that had settled over my spirit since the reception. We chose a quiet corner of the cafe we had frequented during happier times. The place was almost empty, a soft murmur of distant conversations barely brushing against the clink of coffee cups. Ben was already there, his figure slumped, his eyes staring into the void of his untouched coffee. As I approached, my heart pounded with a tumult of emotions, anger, sadness, but mostly a profound sense of betrayal. Ben, I started, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to talk about what happened at the wedding. He looked up, his expression weary. I know, and I'm sorry, he said, his voice low. The apology sounded sincere, but it did little to quell the storm inside me. Sorry? I echoed, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to remain composed. Do you understand what you've done? You promised me, Ben. You looked me in the eyes and promised that you wouldn't propose at our wedding. Ben shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I know, I did, and I meant it at the time, but... His voice trailed off, unable to find an excuse that would suffice. But what? I pressed, needing to hear him say it, needing to understand how he could justify turning our wedding day into the backdrop for his own agenda. It just seemed like the perfect moment, he finally said, almost in a whisper. Everyone was there, everyone was happy, and I thought... You thought it would be okay to steal our moment? To disregard my feelings? To break your promise? Each question was sharper than the last, my frustration boiling over. Ben sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. I didn't think it would hurt you this much. I thought you'd be happy for me, for us. The simplicity of his misunderstanding was almost laughable. A wedding day is about the couple getting married. It's our day. Our special moment. What made you think it was appropriate to shift the focus from us to you without even considering how it would affect me? Affect Liam? Ben looked down, the guilt finally settling in his features. I see that now. I was selfish. And I'm sorry. I just wanted everything to be perfect for Melody. And in doing so, you spoiled what was supposed to be a perfect day for us, I said, the hurt clear in my voice. Did you ever think about Liam in all this? Your brother, who struggles so much with conflict and pleasing everyone? He was silent, the impact of his actions dawning on him. I didn't. I thought he was okay with it, after what he said at dinner that night. Liam tries to make everyone happy, especially you. He often doesn't express his true feelings because he doesn't want to upset anyone. My voice softened as I thought of my husband, caught between his loyalty to his brother and his love for me. Ben nodded slowly, the regret visible. I've put him in a tough spot, haven't I? And you? I've put you through so much. Yes, you have. And I don't know how we're going to get past this. You broke my trust, Ben. And worse, you've made Liam part of this mess. The cafe was silent for a moment, the weight of the conversation dampening the air around us. Ben finally spoke, his voice resolute. I want to make it right. Tell me what I can do to fix this. I looked at him, searching for any sign of insincerity. It's not about quick fixes, Ben. It's about understanding the impact of your actions. You need to respect boundaries, respect what Liam and I have. You need to step back and think about others before yourself. Ben nodded, his eyes meeting mine. I'll do better, I promise. I hope you can, I said, standing up to leave. For the sake of our family, for the sake of your relationship with your brother, and for your future with Melody. You need to start thinking about the people you love as much as you think about what you want. As I walked away from the cafe, the cool air felt refreshing against the flush of emotion on my cheeks. The conversation had been difficult, necessary, but far from comforting. The road to forgiveness and trust was long, and I wasn't sure where to start. But I knew it would begin with a conversation with Liam, where we would have to navigate the damage done to our relationship together. How we would rebuild that trust was uncertain, but one thing was clear. It would take time, understanding, and a lot of healing. As I made my way home from the cafe, the cold silence from Liam's family became increasingly oppressive. It wasn't just the absence of any attempt to reach out that stung, it was their complete disregard for the gravity of their actions at our wedding. This silence was deafening, an implicit endorsement of Ben's behavior, and a clear dismissal of my feelings. In the days that followed, my phone remained disturbingly quiet. No calls, no messages, nothing from Liam's family. Even Liam's attempts to communicate were punctuated with hesitation, his messages a mix of apologies and attempts to explain his family's perspective. Each conversation left me more disillusioned about the possibility of reconciliation, not just with Ben, but with the entire family. On social media, the narrative was starkly different. The focus was all on Ben and Melody's engagement. Pictures of the proposal at our wedding flooded their feeds, accompanied by congratulatory messages and heart emojis. It was as if our wedding was merely a backdrop to their moment. Comments like, "What a perfect surprise," and "So romantic to do it at the wedding," filled their posts, each one a needle to my already wounded heart. What hurt the most was the lack of acknowledgement of the pain they had caused. It seemed as though Liam's family had created a narrative in which I was the antagonist for not sharing in their joy. Conversations I overheard or snippets from family chats that Liam showed me in an attempt to bridge understanding only revealed a deeper disconnect. They called me unreasonable, even selfish, for not appreciating the beautiful moment Ben had created. This perspective was not just hurtful, but alienating. It painted a clear picture of a family that valued spectacle over sensitivity, and public moments over personal integrity. Their inability to see the intrusion on our special day as problematic highlighted a fundamental difference in values that seemed irreconcilable. The realization that they saw me as the one at fault was baffling. How could they not see that their actions were a betrayal, not just of social norms but of personal trust? Their celebration of the proposal, without a single word of apology or acknowledgement of my feelings, was a clear sign of their priorities and loyalties. In response, I began to reflect on what this meant for my future in this family. How could I integrate into a family that so blatantly disregarded my feelings? How could Liam and I build a life together with the shadow of his family's insensitivity always lurking? These were questions that plagued me, each one chipping away at the foundation of the life I thought I was building with Liam. As the days turned into weeks, the lack of outreach from his family cemented my feelings of isolation. Their unrepentant attitude and selfish behavior were not just hurtful. They were indicative of a deeper pattern of disregard for anyone outside their immediate circle of approval. This realization brought me to a difficult decision. If there was to be any hope of salvaging our relationship, not just between Liam and me, but between me and his family, there needed to be a clear, honest conversation about boundaries, respect, and the importance of acknowledging and rectifying harm when it's done. Liam would need to understand and support this need for respect and acknowledgement if we were to move forward. I needed to communicate to Liam that this wasn't just about a ruined wedding day, but about what that day represented. A lack of respect for our union and for me as a person. Our next steps would need to include setting clear boundaries with his family, with consequences for crossing them. Only through these measures could we hope to rebuild trust and respect, essential foundations for any relationship, especially one marred by such a profound betrayal. As challenging as these conversations would be, they were necessary. I was prepared to stand firm, to demand the respect and consideration I deserved. If Liam and his family were unable to meet these basic requirements, I would have to reconsider what my future would look like, possibly even without them. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was resolved to ensure it was one where my dignity and self-respect were no longer up for debate. In the days that followed, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion. My side of the family was furious with Liam and his family. Meanwhile, Liam's family was busy congratulating Ben and Melody, their Facebook feeds filled with pictures of the proposal. It was like our wedding didn't matter to them at all. I was prepared to file for an annulment and move on. But then, I received an email from Liam. He poured his heart out, explaining how Ben and their parents had pressured him relentlessly until he finally caved. He admitted he was wrong for not coming to me and apologized profusely. "You were so stressed and I didn't want to worry you," he wrote. "Please give me another chance." Now I'm torn. I love Liam, and I know he's telling the truth. He's a horrible liar, and his sincerity shines through. But can I rebuild the trust that was broken? Can I persuade him that a family should never do that to one of their own? As I sit here, staring at his email, I know I have a difficult decision to make. Is our marriage salvageable? Only time will tell. Drawing from the story, there are several significant experiences and lessons that offer valuable insights into navigating personal relationships and conflicts within a family dynamic. One of the central issues is the failure of communication between family members. Clear, honest and open communication is crucial in any relationship, particularly in managing expectations and resolving conflicts. The bride's attempt to communicate her concerns about the proposal and set boundaries was a step in the right direction, though it was ultimately disregarded. The story also highlights the importance of setting and enforcing boundaries within familial and marital relationships. Boundaries help protect personal integrity and ensure that relationships are mutually respectful. When boundaries are crossed, as they were in this story, it can lead to significant emotional distress and conflict. This underscores the complexity of family dynamics, especially when one family member's needs or behaviors overshadow others. Liam's difficulty in balancing his loyalty to his family and his new wife underscores the challenges that can arise in relationships where familial interference is common. The impact of external approval and pressure, as seen through Liam's family's need for external validation on social media, significantly impacted the couple's relationship. This shows how external pressures and the pursuit of approval can distort personal priorities and relationships. Despite the shock and betrayal, the bride's emotional journey from contemplation and decision-making reflects resilience. Facing betrayal, especially from loved ones, is profoundly painful, yet her response demonstrates strength in advocating for her own needs and emotional well-being. While the bride felt wronged, the story also points to the importance of understanding other perspectives. Although not excusable, Ben's actions stemmed from his personal insecurities and desire for a memorable engagement. Understanding the underlying motivations does not justify the actions, but can aid in resolving conflicts and healing. Ultimately, the bride's realization that she must demand respect and consider her future happiness speaks to the importance of maintaining personal integrity and self-respect in relationships. Should I set clear boundaries with my boyfriend regarding his quickly blossoming relationship with a female coworker? The evening air was crisp, holding a hint of autumn's chill as I walked across the sprawling campus of the university. It was a time marked by youthful dreams and scholarly pursuits, a period that now seems both distant and vividly close to my heart. It was here, amidst the hallowed halls and buzzing student centers, that I first met Brian. He was, like me, a newcomer to the intricate world of graduate studies, eager to carve out a niche in the academic world. Our initial encounter was as unremarkable as it was fortuitous, occurring during a mandatory orientation for incoming students. I remember the room was overly warm, filled with the nervous energy of dozens of students. Brian sat next to me, introduced by a mutual acquaintance who had prematurely left to answer a call. Left alone, we struck up a conversation, initially threading through the safe territories of our academic interests and backgrounds. He was a student of environmental science, passionate about renewable energy, while I pursued sociology, driven by a desire to understand the undercurrents of human interactions. Our fields were different, yet complementary, a theme that would underscore much of our future together. In the weeks that followed, our paths crossed with increasing frequency, often at the university library or during various group projects. Our friendship blossomed effortlessly. We shared long debates over cups of lukewarm coffee, challenging each other's perspectives and, often, discovering our shared values. Brian's intellect was matched by his kindness and humor, a combination that pulled me into a circle of comfort and laughter. There was an ease between us, a silent acknowledgement of mutual respect and admiration that deepened with time. As our second year of graduate school commenced, circumstances led us to become roommates. The decision was practical at its core, motivated by our compatible living habits and the convenience of sharing rent. Yet, living together brought a new depth to our friendship. Our evenings were filled with shared meals and continued debates, our academic passions spilling over into every conversation. We were both ambitious, driven not just by personal goals but by a desire to make a meaningful impact on the world. It was during one particularly poignant evening, as winter whispered through thin walls, that our relationship took a romantic turn. We had been discussing a group project when a sudden power outage plunged the apartment into darkness. In the soft glow of candlelight, our conversation shifted from academic to personal. Vulnerabilities were shared between shadows, and I saw in Brian a profound emotional depth. The line between friendship and something more blurred, and we found ourselves drawn together not just by intellectual compatibility but by a burgeoning emotional connection. Our transition from friends to partners felt as natural as it was inevitable. We continued to share an apartment, now not just as roommates but as a couple. The dynamics shifted subtly. Where there had once been 2 beds, there now stood one. Our discussions still ranged from the professional to the profoundly silly, but they were now punctuated by moments of tenderness, by shared smiles and soft touches that spoke of a deeper bond. When graduate school ended, reality ushered in challenges. We found jobs in different states, and for a brief period, our relationship was stretched across miles of separation. The long-distance phase was trying, filled with longing and the frustration of connecting through screens. Yet our foundation was solid, built on years of trust and understanding. We learned to communicate in new ways, keeping our connection alive through daily calls and texts, counting down the days until we could be together again. The decision for Brian to move states and join me was a testament to the strength of our commitment. It was a leap of faith, leaving behind his established life to build a new one with me. I remember the day he arrived, his car filled with boxes and a hopeful smile gracing his lips. It was a pivotal moment, one that marked the beginning of a new chapter for us. Now, we live together in our own apartment, a cozy space that is distinctly ours. It's a place filled with laughter, occasional debates, and plans for the future. We cook together, experimenting with recipes and laughing at our culinary misadventures. Evenings are spent curled up on the couch, sharing our days or lost in a movie or book. We support each other's careers, understanding the pressures and triumphs, always ready to offer encouragement or a listening ear. Brian is more than just my partner, he is my best friend, the person I plan to spend the rest of my life with. Our relationship is built on a deep mutual respect and love, on shared values and dreams. We talk often about the future, about marriage and the life we hope to build. With each passing day, my anticipation for a proposal grows, not out of expectation, but from a deep-seated knowledge of our readiness to embark on that journey together. As I reflect on our relationship, from its humble beginnings on the university campus to the life we are building together, I am filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the laughter, the support, and the love that fills our days. It's a relationship rooted in friendship, strengthened by challenges, and blossoming with promise. In Brian, I have found a partner, a confidant, and a love that feels as destined as it is profound. Brian's transition into a new job was a breath of fresh air after our reunion. As he adapted to his new role, his stories about work and colleagues became a regular part of our evening conversations. Among the names that started to pop up was Liz's. Initially, she was just another coworker he mentioned in passing, a project they collaborated on, a shared laugh over a coffee break mishap. It was normal, the kind of workday interactions you'd expect in any office setting. Liz seemed to quickly become a notable figure in his daily recounts. Liz has this incredible knack for organizing things, Brian would say, or, Liz brought in these amazing muffins today. It was all very innocuous, the typical budding workplace friendship. I learned she had worked with an organization closely linked to mine, which added layers of small world charm to their interactions. She knows Sarah from your team, Brian mentioned one night, and I found it funny how interconnected our worlds seemed. My reaction to Liz was shaped by trust, a trust that was deep-seated in the fabric of our relationship. Having seen Brian maintain friendships with women throughout our years together, I had little reason for concern. He had always been transparent about these friendships, and there had been several instances where he hung out with female friends without me. Each time, he shared his plans openly, often encouraging me to join if I was available. There was only ever one exception, a friend from his past that I hadn't felt comfortable about, but upon expressing my feelings, Brian immediately adjusted his boundaries with her. That gesture had solidified my trust further, reassuring me that our relationship came first. This history laid a foundation of confidence as Liz became a more frequent topic. When Brian mentioned that Liz wanted to meet me, it felt like a positive step. She thinks it'd be great to get all of us together, a mini get-together, he suggested. Liz's presence was introduced with the utmost normalcy. She was just a friend, a co-worker, and nothing more. She had a fiancé. They were planning their life together, mirroring in some ways the life that Brian and I were building. This parallel comforted me, painting Liz as someone who was walking a path similar to ours. My comfort with the situation was a testament to the strength and openness of our relationship. Brian's stories about Liz were transparent and regular, filled with mundane details and work-related anecdotes. They brought a sense of normalcy to his new job environment, a place where he was still planting his roots. In the grand tapestry of our lives, Liz was just another thread, adding color and texture, but not disrupting the pattern we had so carefully woven together. As the weeks slipped by, a pattern began to emerge in our daily exchanges. Brian's new job was going well, and his enthusiasm was palpable, but so was the frequency of his mentions of Liz. It started subtly, comments about her contributions in meetings, her insights on projects they were working on together. However, as days turned into weeks, Liz's presence in our conversations grew more pronounced. One evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, Brian brought up a new development. Liz suggested we start carpooling, he said, drying a plate nonchalantly. He explained that Liz lived nearby in a temporary apartment due to her fiancé's job, which often required them to relocate. It makes sense, you know? We're both heading the same way, and it could save us both some time and gas money. The office was about a 30-minute drive without traffic, but morning rush hour stretched it to nearly 45 minutes each way. I nodded, understanding the practicality of it, yet a knot formed in my stomach. Carpooling meant they would be spending at least an hour and a half together alone every day they headed into the office. My mind raced with questions I didn't voice. Would their conversations stray from work? Would this closeness breed a familiarity that edged into more personal territory? He mentioned it would only be for 2 to 3 days a week, depending on their office days and fieldwork. It's just an idea for now, he assured me with a smile. I forced a smile back, pushing my unease aside. The first day he actually picked her up, he mentioned it casually as he grabbed his keys. Okay, I'm going to go pick up Liz and head into work. I was caught off guard, not realizing they had decided to start. When he returned home that evening, it was as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred, and he didn't bring it up again. According to him, it wasn't a regular arrangement, but the seed of discomfort had been planted. The situation escalated unexpectedly. While we were enjoying a quiet evening watching a movie, Brian casually mentioned that Liz and her fiancé were looking for a more permanent place to live. They're actually interested in our building, he said, almost as an afterthought. They're coming to see it tomorrow. I paused the movie, turning to look at him. Our building was a coveted spot in downtown, known for its amenities and prime location, but it was also one of many. The news unsettled me. The proximity felt too close for comfort. The next day, I saw them briefly in the elevator, being shown around by management. They were polite, and the meeting was brief, but the reality of them moving into our building started to sink in. That evening, Brian received a text from Liz. They decided to rent here, he announced, a note of happiness in his voice that I couldn't mirror. The proximity meant more shared rides, more interactions, and an intimacy that was too close for my comfort. From then on, mentions of Liz weren't just frequent. They became a daily occurrence. They texted and called, discussing work or their apartments. Brian was transparent about these interactions, always open about the context of their conversations, yet the frequency made me uneasy. I didn't see his phone often, so the depth and tone of their exchanges were unknown to me, cloaked in the veil of work-related chats. As I lay in bed one night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but feel a shift. The ease that once defined our evenings was now punctuated by the subtle presence of someone else. My mind raced with uncertainties and what-ifs. Was I being unreasonable? Was the threat I perceived real or just a shadow cast by overthinking? These thoughts swirled in my mind, a quiet storm brewing over what seemed like practical, innocent arrangements. The foundation of trust we had built our relationship upon was trembling under the weight of my insecurities, and I knew a conversation loomed on the horizon. A conversation where my fears and feelings would have to be voiced, where the strength of our relationship would be tested by the complexities of human connections and boundaries yet to be defined. The unsettling feeling that had slowly begun to plant its roots within me started to sprout as days turned into weeks. It wasn't just the car rides anymore. Brian's phone would buzz more frequently than before, the screen lighting up with Liz's name. They were small interactions, at least as Brian explained them. Questions about a project or a quick confirmation about something work-related. Yet, each buzz seemed to echo louder in the quiet of our shared space, ringing with the potential of something I couldn't quite name but felt deeply. One afternoon stood out, a day when the thin veil of my discomfort was pierced by a moment so trivial yet so profound in its impact. We were at my parents' house for a family lunch, a rare gathering that brought warmth and laughter into the late summer air. Amidst the clinking of cutlery and the hum of conversation, Brian's phone rang. He glanced at it, excused himself, and stepped out into the garden. I watched him through the window, phone to his ear, a frown of concentration etched across his face. When he returned, sliding back into his seat as if nothing had happened, curiosity got the better of me. "Who was it?" I asked casually, passing him a bowl of salad. "Oh, it was Liz," he responded without meeting my eyes. Just some questions because they were moving in at the time. The simplicity of his answer did nothing to soothe the flurry of questions swirling in my mind. Why hadn't he mentioned it right away? Was there a reason he needed to take the call outside? This incident lodged itself in my thoughts, a splinter that irritated with each passing moment. My trust, once solid and unwavering, now felt like a tapestry fraying at the edges, threads of doubt weaving through its once pristine surface. These feelings deepened a few days later when we drove Brian to the airport. As we approached the drop-off zone, I ventured a question, trying to keep my voice light. "You're just taking an Uber back home, right?" His hesitation was slight but noticeable. "I was actually going to see if maybe Liz could pick me up, so I don't have to spend money on an Uber," he admitted. And I could hear the casual practicality in his voice, a stark contrast to the tightening in my chest. My response was measured, reminding him gently that Liz and her fiancé were busy moving. He considered this, nodding in agreement, and settled on the Uber instead. But the seed of discomfort had already sprouted into a gnarling vine, winding its way around my heart. The ease with which he had thought to call Liz, his slight hesitation, and the potential implications of such a decision played over in my mind during the silent drive back home. In the solitude of our apartment, I found myself increasingly wrestling with my feelings. The trust that I so cherished seemed to be under siege by these small, seemingly inconsequential moments. Each text, each call, each decision that subtly included Liz felt like a small chip away from the foundation we had built. Was I being unreasonable? Was my discomfort rooted in jealousy, or was it a signal of something more? A boundary being crossed without my consent? The internal debate was exhausting. Part of me wanted to dismiss these feelings, to chalk them up to overthinking, to the insecurity that perhaps all relationships face at one point or another. But another part, a more visceral, instinctive part, clung to these concerns with a tenacity that surprised me. It wasn't just about Liz, it was about us, about me and Brian and the invisible lines that define what is comfortable and what is not in our relationship. As the days passed, these thoughts did not ebb but grew stronger, fueled by each small interaction that Brian shared with Liz. I found myself observing him, watching for signs, for any indication that what I felt was grounded in reality, and not just in my fears. It was a silent vigil, one that kept me awake at night, my eyes tracing the shadows on the ceiling, my mind replaying each day's interactions. After days of wrestling with my unease, I realized that silence was no longer an option. The weight of unspoken thoughts was too heavy, and it was time to clear the air, for the sake of our relationship which I treasured above all. One evening, as we sat side by side on our soft lived-in couch, I turned off the television, needing his full attention for this conversation. "Brian, can we talk?" My voice was shaky, betraying the nerves I felt. He looked at me, his expression turning serious as he muted the TV. "Of course, what's up?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "It's about Liz," I started, hesitating slightly. "I've been feeling a bit uncomfortable with how close you two have gotten recently. It's not that I don't trust you, but..." My voice trailed off, unsure how to express the turmoil inside without sounding accusatory. Brian turned to face me fully, his brows furrowed in concern. "Hey, I didn't realize you felt that way. I'm sorry, it's just been work stuff mostly. Liz is just a friend, you know that, right?" "I do, I really do. But it's not just the friendship. It's the time you spend together, carpooling, the phone calls. It feels like a lot, and sometimes I feel left out," I admitted, my heart pounding as I laid my vulnerabilities bare. He reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel left out. Liz and I do talk about work, and since she's new in town, I guess I've been trying to make her feel welcome." I nodded, appreciating his honesty. "I understand that, and I appreciate you helping her. Maybe we could all hang out together. I'd love to meet her fiancé too. It might help me feel more comfortable about everything." Brian's face brightened at the suggestion. "That's a great idea. I'll set something up. How about we all go out for drinks this weekend?" "Sounds perfect," I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The mere act of discussing these feelings was like letting air out of a ballooning pressure inside me. The weekend came swiftly, and we met Liz and her fiancé, Tom, at a local bar known for its cozy atmosphere and good music. The initial greetings were somewhat awkward, the air tinged with my own anxieties about how the evening would go. However, as we settled into our seats and ordered drinks, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Liz was warm and engaging, and Tom was friendly with a good sense of humor that complemented Brian's. Liz and I found common ground in our professional interests, and to my surprise, we shared a love for old jazz music, which the bar was softly playing in the background. "You have great taste in music," Liz complimented, her smile genuine. "Thanks. Brian mentioned you're planning your wedding. How's that going?" I asked, genuinely interested. "It's been fun but hectic. Tom's been a huge help though," Liz replied, her eyes twinkling as she glanced at Tom, who gave a mock bow of acknowledgement. As the night progressed, laughter filled our table. Any remnants of awkwardness dissolved into the mirth of discovering new friendships. Brian and Tom debated over sports, while Liz and I discussed everything from wedding plans to our favorite books. By the end of the evening, it felt like we had all known each other for much longer than a few hours. Plans were made for future outings, and Brian and I walked home hand in hand, a new ease between us. Over the next few months, Liz and I grew closer. We started a routine of having lunch together once a week, and she and Tom often joined us for movie nights or weekend brunches. Our conversations meandered from professional topics to personal dreams and challenges. Liz opened up about the struggles of moving frequently for Tom's job, and I shared my experiences of managing work-life balance. One particularly memorable evening, we all participated in a local trivia night. Teamwork had never been so hilarious, with each of us bringing our quirks and knowledge to the table. We didn't win, but as we sat laughing over our absurdly wrong answers, I realized how deeply these new connections had enriched our lives. It wasn't just about getting to know Liz better, it was about understanding Brian's world from another perspective, about intertwining our lives with others in meaningful ways. My fears and insecurities had not just been eased, they had been transformed into opportunities for growth and friendship. Our relationships with Liz and Tom added new layers to our social dynamics, creating a supportive network that transcended mere acquaintance. It was during these months that I learned not just to trust Brian, but to trust in the resilience of our bond, understanding that it could stretch to include others without weakening. As I reflect on those initial fears, they seem like distant echoes now, overshadowed by the laughter, support and camaraderie we've built together. It's strange how life unfolds, how situations that once seemed so daunting become the pathways to richer, more colorful experiences. In learning to voice my concerns, in navigating through my insecurities, I found not just peace but a deeper connection to Brian, and a friendship in Liz that I now cherish. Our story, marked by a simple conversation that one evening, reminds me continually of the power of communication, honesty, and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. Update. It was an evening like no other. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, as Brian and I headed out for what I thought was just another lovely dinner date. Little did I know, it was the night that would change our lives forever. As we arrived at the restaurant, I noticed Brian seemed unusually nervous, his hands slightly trembling as he held the door open for me. The atmosphere was intimate. A small, elegantly decorated place known for its incredible views of the city skyline. Over dinner, we reminisced about our journey together, from college friends to life partners, each memory laced with laughter and shared dreams. Despite the beautiful setting and perfect conversation, I couldn't help but notice Brian's distracted glances and the deep breaths he took as if bracing himself. I attributed it to work stress, not wanting to pry or disturb the evening's magic. When we returned home, the sight that greeted me left me breathless. Our apartment was transformed into a glowing sanctuary, adorned with hundreds of roses and candles that cast a soft romantic light across the walls. My heart raced as I took in the scene, my hands covering my mouth in disbelief. There, in the midst of this fairy tale setting, Brian got down on one knee, his eyes shining with emotion. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded, whispering a joyful, "Yes." We embraced, the candles flickering around us, and I felt a surge of love so strong it seemed to fill the entire room. The next hours were a blur of happy tears, laughter, and excited phone calls to friends and family, sharing the news of our engagement. As the excitement of the evening settled, Brian shared with me how it all came together, revealing a surprise that made the night even more special. Liz, his co-worker and our new friend, had been instrumental in planning the proposal. He explained that because of her proximity, living just a few floors away in our building, he had been able to coordinate all the deliveries secretly. The flowers, candles, champagne, and even the ring had been at Liz's apartment, safely hidden from my curious eyes. She even held onto the ring the week before I proposed, Brian chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief at the secrecy required. I couldn't have pulled this off without her help. The following day, Liz came up to our apartment to congratulate us personally. Her eyes were misty as she hugged us both, and she took out her camera to capture the moment. It was then, seeing her genuine happiness for us, that I fully grasped the depth of her kindness and friendship. What I had initially perceived as a threat had blossomed into an invaluable bond. She had not only respected our relationship but had actively helped celebrate it. This revelation was profound. It underscored how essential open communication had been throughout the entire process. From addressing my insecurities about their friendship to involving her in such a pivotal moment in our lives. It taught me that the fears and discomfort I had felt were natural, but that confronting them openly could lead to outcomes far beyond what I might have expected. Over the next few months, as Brian and I dove into wedding planning, Liz became an even greater part of our lives. We shared tips, vendor recommendations, and endless Pinterest boards. Our girls' nights became regular fixtures, filled with wedding talk and mutual support. Liz and I planned our weddings together, reveling in the joy of crafting our perfect days, and through it all, our friendship deepened. Looking back, I am amazed at how things unfolded. What began as a period of uncertainty and fear transformed into a chapter filled with love, friendship, and understanding. Liz and I, once potential rivals in my mind, were now allies and confidants, planning our futures side by side. Brian's unwavering support and openness through every step reassured me of the unshakable foundation of our relationship. Our story, marked by moments of doubt and strengthened by communication, is a testament to the unpredictable nature of relationships. It is a reminder that the heart's capacity for love and forgiveness is boundless, and that sometimes, those we perceive as threats can become our staunchest allies. As I look forward to walking down the aisle next year, to say, I do to the man who has been my best friend, my confidant, and now my fiancé, I am filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the love that surrounds us, for the friends who support us, and for the unexpected twists in life that often lead to the most beautiful destinations. Liz's role in our engagement story is a beautiful reminder of how interconnected our lives are, and how the power of community and friendship can elevate the most significant moments of our lives. Indeed, communication saves the day again, proving that when hearts are open, and intentions clear, the bonds we form can lead us through any storm to a brighter, shared horizon. I quit my job to care for my father, but was shocked to discover his interactions with a prostitute broker and substantial withdrawals from his brokerage account. My name is Daniel. At 29, living in a bustling metropolitan area just an hour's drive from where I was raised, I find myself in a juxtaposition of worlds. My high-paced urban life as a successful software developer contrasts sharply with the quiet suburban life of my family. Earning $200,000 a year, I've established a comfortable existence in the city, complete with a sleek apartment overlooking the skyline, a wardrobe suited for tech company chic, and a social circle that revolves around tech meetups, weekend hiking trips, and the occasional high-end restaurant outing. Yet despite this seemingly ideal setup, my thoughts frequently drift back to the single-story house nestled in the serene suburbs, the place I still call home. The house, with its fading red brick facade and the large oak tree my father planted the year I was born, cradles more than just memories. It embodies the ongoing story of my family. My mother Jane, at 64, still powers through her work week, dedicating over 60 hours to her managerial role at a local logistics company. Despite the toll it takes, she brings home $95,000 annually, a sum that barely stretches to cover the essentials and the medical bills that have begun to pile up. Her resilience, often silent and unacknowledged, has been the cornerstone of our family's survival. Living with her are my father, Michael, and my older sister Sarah, along with her spirited 4.5-year-old son, Ethan. Dad, age 73, retired a few years back. His days of working as an electrician are behind him, replaced now by afternoons on the porch with a crossword puzzle, the remnants of a life spent in labor quietly fading into the routine of a man sustained by Social Security checks. His recent health scares, multiple heart surgeries aimed at preventing strokes, have marked him with a fragility that is both new and deeply disconcerting. Sarah, having never quite recovered from a tumultuous divorce, teaches at a local preschool. Earning just $60 an hour, she relies heavily on our parents for support. The echoes of her laughter, once the soundtrack of our childhood, now seem muffled by the weight of single motherhood and financial strain. Ethan's youthful energy brings a much-needed brightness to the house, his innocence a stark contrast to the complexities of the adult lives around him. Growing up, the warmth of family was the foundation of my world. My parents, though never well off, ensured that my sister and I lacked for nothing essential. They poured their energies into nurturing our interests, mine in computers and hers in art, fueling our dreams with the kind of unwavering support only parents can provide. This backdrop of familial love and sacrifice has shaped my understanding of responsibility and gratitude. Even as a teenager, I understood that the financial planning my parents had managed wouldn't suffice for their retirement. The inevitability of my role as their future financial backbone became apparent early on. It was a silent promise I made to myself, standing in our modest backyard, looking up at the stars, a promise to give back to the two people who had given me everything. My life now, filled with coding sprints and software launches, is worlds away from the simplicity of suburban rhythms. Yet the success I've found in the city isn't just mine, it belongs to my family too. Each achievement, each milestone reached, is a testament to the sacrifices made in that small house. This connection pulls me back, time and again, to where it all began. The phone calls began to increase about 6 months ago. Mom's voice, usually steady and calm, carried a tremor of worry as she updated me on Dad's health. The surgeries, the complications, and the haunting diagnosis of microvascular dementia and cerebrovascular disease that followed. Each call etched a deeper line of concern into my daily life, a stark reminder of the ephemeral nature of time and health. It was during one such call, as I gazed out over the city lights from my apartment, that the decision was made. The pull of my family's needs outweighed the allure of city lights and fleeting tech trends. I knew then with a certainty that rooted itself deep within me. I needed to return home, to be there in ways that phone calls and weekend visits simply couldn't cover. So, I started to plan. Plan for a future that involved more than just my personal aspirations, plans that would weave the safety and well-being of my family into the fabric of my daily existence. This wasn't just a decision born out of duty but out of a deep-seated love and a commitment to those who had shaped me. This return home isn't merely a change of address, it's a reorientation of my life's priorities. As I pack up my city life, each item I place into a box, a book, a photo, a souvenir from a tech conference, is a tangible reminder of the journey I've undertaken. Ahead lies a path filled with challenges and adjustments, but also with the opportunity to give back in the most meaningful way possible. As I maneuvered my sedan into the familiar driveway of my childhood home, the crunch of gravel under tires felt like a metaphor for the uneasy reintroduction to a life I once knew. Stepping out, I was greeted by the sight of my mother, Jane, at the front door. Her smile was warm but worn, the kind that spoke of countless worries weathered over years. She wrapped me in an embrace that felt both comforting and desperate, her way of saying she needed help without uttering a word. Inside, the atmosphere of the house was thick with the scent of nostalgia mixed with tension. My sister Sarah stood in the kitchen, a half-smile playing on her lips as she juggled making dinner and entertaining Ethan, who buzzed around with the boundless energy of childhood. Our greetings were brief, a stilted exchange that belied the deeper currents of concern we all felt but didn't voice. Sarah was visibly thinner than I remembered, her face drawn not just from the fatigue of single motherhood, but from the constant strain of living in a house clouded with uncertainty. The first few days were an adjustment, a recalibration of roles within our family dynamics. My mother continued to work, her hours unyielding despite the added emotional load. At night, we sat at the dinner table, conversations skirting around the unspoken, Dad's condition, the financial strain, the future. It was during these meals that I truly understood the full extent of what had been kept from me in our phone calls. The weight of Dad's medical expenses, the fear of what was to come, and the everyday challenges of caring for someone who was slowly forgetting the life he had led. Dad's interactions with us had changed profoundly. Once a lively storyteller, his conversations now lost their thread, his frustrations palpable as he grappled with the gaps in his memory. Observing him, I saw flashes of the man who taught me to ride a bike, who fixed broken appliances with a magician's ease, now struggling to remember names, faces, and dates. The impact on Mom was heartbreaking. She oscillated between being a caring spouse and a weary nurse, her face etching deeper with lines of sorrow each day. Sarah's reaction to my return was mixed. Initially, there was relief, an extra pair of hands to help, a reprieve from her role as the primary support. But as days passed, old grievances surfaced. We clashed, not just over small mundane things like household chores or schedules, but about deeper issues. Resentments about past decisions, particularly my choice to move away and pursue my career, came to light. "You left just when things were getting tough," she accused one evening, her words slicing through the fragile peace. "And now you just waltz back in expecting to fix everything?" These confrontations were painful but necessary. They opened up dialogues long overdue, about our roles in this family, about support and sacrifice. It was through these difficult conversations that we began to navigate our new reality. Slowly, we started to forge a path forward, not just as individuals living under one roof, but as a cohesive unit facing a crisis together. Through it all, my bond with Ethan became a source of joy and escape. His innocence and unbridled enthusiasm for life reminded us all of the simpler joys. In his world, the problems were as solvable as figuring out the right block to fit into a puzzle. He became my little shadow, following me around, asking questions, his laughter a balm on the rough days. As weeks turned into months, my role in the family began to solidify. I found myself balancing my work remotely with attending doctor's appointments with Dad, discussing financial strategies with Mom, and providing moral support to Sarah. The shift was palpable. Where once I was just a visitor in their lives, I now became an integral part of the household's daily rhythm. One evening, as Mom and I sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispered. "It's been hard. Harder than I ever let on. But having you here makes it feel like we can manage this, like we're not alone in it." Her words struck a chord. I realized then that my return was not just about providing financial or physical support. It was about healing, about mending the frayed threads of our family fabric. It was about showing up, not just in times of crisis but every day, proving through actions that family, with all its imperfections and challenges, is worth every sacrifice. The transition back home wasn't smooth. It was fraught with adjustments, misunderstandings, and at times heartache. But it was also filled with moments of profound connection, understanding, and gradual healing. In this house, with these people, I rediscovered the essence of home. It wasn't just a place, but a feeling of belonging, of being needed, and most importantly, of loving and being loved, unconditionally. The stability we once took for granted began to shake when my father's health declined. The man who taught me how to throw a baseball, who could fix just about anything broken, found himself battling a series of health issues that seemed to come one after the other. It started with heart problems that required immediate and intensive medical intervention. The terms TAVR, transcatheter aortic valve replacement, and TCAR, transcarotid artery revascularization, became unexpectedly familiar as we navigated through the complexities of cardiac surgeries designed to prevent strokes. Despite the doctor's efforts, a stroke slipped through the cracks of medical prevention, leaving him with small vessel disease and vascular dementia. His cognitive functions began to deteriorate, a stark contrast to the sharp wit and immense knowledge he once wielded effortlessly. Making the decision to move back home wasn't easy. It required me to uproot the life I had built in the city, the late-night coding sessions, the weekend hikes, the network of ambitious, tech-savvy friends. I had to step away from a promotion that was almost in reach, trading potential career advancements for family responsibilities. It was a trade I made willingly, driven by an innate sense of duty that my parents had instilled in me from a young age. Moving back to the suburban home where I grew up meant reacquainting myself with its rhythms and routines. My old room, once a shrine to teenage ambitions and dreams, now seemed smaller, the walls echoing the past. Adjusting to this life meant quieter evenings, the absence of city noise replaced by the subtle sounds of a house that breathed with the lives of its inhabitants. It meant seeing my father's empty chair at the dinner table when he had particularly bad days, and it meant stepping into the role of caretaker, a role I had never envisioned in my youthful imaginings. To aid in my father's care, I introduced technology that I hoped would bridge the gap between his needs and my ability to meet them. The AirPods Pro I bought him connected him to his favorite music and shows, providing comfort when the confusion of dementia clouded his mind. More significantly, I gifted him my Apple Watch Series 8, equipped with health monitoring features. This watch became a crucial tool in tracking his heart's behavior, particularly its ability to detect atrial fibrillation, a condition we now watched meticulously. The transition was emotionally taxing. The joy of being close to my family again was often overshadowed by the realities of my father's condition. Each doctor's visit, each small sign of his worsening health, reminded me of why I had returned. I spent countless hours researching ways to enhance his quality of life, from diet changes to cognitive exercises that might slow the progression of his dementia. That night was unusually quiet, the sort of silence that seems almost anticipatory, as if the house itself was holding its breath. After dinner, where conversation fluttered nervously around mundane topics, I found myself restless. With a mind that refused to quiet, I decided to tinker with some of the tech gadgets I'd brought for Dad, thinking perhaps I could distract myself. Dad had always been somewhat wary of technology, but he had taken a peculiar interest in the Apple Watch I gave him, fascinated by its ability to monitor his heart rate and other health metrics. It had become a routine for me to help him set it up, ensure it was charged, and sometimes, reset it to make sure it was functioning optimally. That night, as I took the watch into my hands, I noticed it needed resetting. The screen was lit up with notifications, too many for Dad to have possibly managed on his own. As I navigated through the menus to find the settings, a message notification popped up briefly before disappearing. My curiosity piqued, I ventured into the Messages app. It was then I noticed the recently deleted folder had entries, something I hadn't expected Dad to know how to use. The logical part of my mind suggested there was a simple explanation. Perhaps Mom had deleted messages after borrowing his watch. But something about the late hour, the quiet of the house, and the nagging sense of unease that had settled in my stomach compelled me to open the folder. The messages I found there were not just surprising. They were shocking. The texts were not from family members or old friends, but from an unknown number, discussing arrangements and meetings with an unsettling familiarity and explicitness. Each message was more revealing than the last, discussing times, locations, and payments. The content was clear. My father had been communicating with a prostitute broker. I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me, followed by a sharp pang of betrayal. My father, the man who had taught me the values of honesty and integrity, was leading a secret life that was now laid bare before me. I sat there, the watch heavy in my hands, as I struggled to reconcile this image with the father I thought I knew. Driven by a need to understand the full extent of this betrayal, I logged into his brokerage account, which he had shared access with me years ago for emergencies. What I found only deepened the chasm that was opening up inside me. The account, which should have held close to $100,000, was now down to $66,000. The transaction history showed several withdrawals of $3,000 each over the past year, coinciding with the dates mentioned in the deleted texts. The room felt like it was spinning as I pieced together the implications of these withdrawals. This wasn't just a moral transgression, it was a financial betrayal that affected our entire family. The money in that account was supposed to be part of my parents' retirement fund, crucial for their care, especially given Dad's health condition. Yet it had been siphoned away to fund clandestine meetings that shattered the facade of the life we had been living. I sat alone with this information well into the night, the glow from the screen of my laptop casting shadows on the walls. The weight of what I had discovered felt overwhelming, not just in its immediate impact, but in what it meant for the future. How could I confront my father about this? What would this revelation do to my mother, who had already borne so much? And what of Sarah and Ethan, who lived under this roof, innocent and unaware of the storm that was brewing? The night's revelations hung heavily in the air, tainting the familiar comfort of my old bedroom. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. From anger and betrayal to an overwhelming sense of desolation. Growing up, my father was my hero. He was the one who taught me to ride a bike, to respect others, and to stand up for what I believe in. But as I grew older, I witnessed the facade crumble. Behind closed doors, his relationship with my mother was fraught with tension and discord. He spent money with little regard for our family's financial stability, indulging in whims as if the act could fill the growing voids within our household. My mother, in stark contrast, was the pillar who bore the financial burdens, working tirelessly, yet never allowed herself the luxury of even the smallest indulgences. In my early 20s, the strain had become unbearable. I had issued an ultimatum to them: resolve their issues or face losing me. At the time, it seemed like a necessary threat. Looking back, it only served to deepen the divide, especially with my mother, who felt caught in an impossible situation. She resented the position I put her in, yet continued to patch the seams of our family fabric in silence. The night before, as I delved deeper into my father's deceit, the years of pent-up frustration and disappointment erupted. The discovery of his communications with a prostitute broker, along with the significant withdrawals from his brokerage account, was the last straw. This wasn't just a moral failing, it was a betrayal that jeopardized our family's financial security. Sitting at the kitchen table that morning, surrounded by the remnants of my childhood and the shattered pieces of the respect I once had for my father, I felt a profound sense of alienation. I couldn't face my family. I couldn't look into my mother's eyes, knowing the additional pain this would cause her. So, I made a decision. One that now, in the quiet solitude of my city apartment, I question with every aching part of my being. I left. Without a word of explanation, I packed a bag, the weight of each item seeming to anchor me further into a quagmire of guilt and confusion. I left a note, vague and insufficient, expressing a need for some time alone to think. As I drove back to the metropolitan bustle from which I had come, each mile widened the chasm between my family and me, both physically and emotionally. Now, sitting in the dim light of my apartment, the city sounds a dull roar in the background. I am plagued by uncertainty and remorse. The silence of the space amplifies the chaos of my thoughts. I ponder the irony of how I, who had returned home to mend and care, had fled when the reality of my family's imperfections became too stark to bear. I'm struggling with the dichotomy of my emotions. On one hand, my father's actions are indefensible, a reckless endangerment of our family's stability and my mother's sacrifices. On the other, he is still my father, the man who, despite his flaws, played a crucial role in who I am today. How do I reconcile these two sides? How do I balance the scales of justice and filial duty? I remember my mother's words from years ago, after I had issued my ultimatum. She had said, "We all have our demons and disappointments, but we don't have to carry them alone." Her words echo in my mind now, a reminder that perhaps abandonment isn't the solution, but a continuation of a cycle of hurt. I find myself typing out my thoughts, casting them into the void of the internet. Perhaps someone out there has faced similar crossroads, has navigated the murky waters of familial obligation and personal integrity. I seek not absolution, but perspective. How do others deal with the complexities of family dynamics, where love and disappointment are so often intertwined? As I sit here, the cursor blinking expectantly, I realize that my journey back home isn't just about geographical distance. It's about bridging the gap between the son I was and the man I need to become. It's about facing the hard truths, not just about my father, but about myself and my own reactions. It's about understanding that in the tapestry of family, each thread, however flawed, contributes to the strength and pattern of the whole. Tomorrow, I will call my mother. I will not offer excuses for my abrupt departure, but I will listen. I will try to understand her side of this lifelong partnership that has borne so much strain. And perhaps through these conversations, we can begin to forge a new path forward, not just for her and me, but for our entire family. For now, I sit alone with my thoughts, the city outside unaware of the turmoil within. But I am resolved not to let this night pass without reaching out, without trying to mend what has been broken. For in the end, family is not just about the good times shared, but also about navigating the storms together, and emerging, perhaps a little battered, but whole. I find myself in a situation where I desperately need some guidance, and I hope you can offer me your opinions and possible solutions. After uncovering some troubling secrets about my father's actions, which have jeopardized our family's financial stability and emotional well-being, I'm torn about how to best handle the situation. I left home abruptly, driven by a mix of anger, disappointment, and confusion. And now, sitting alone in my apartment, I'm struggling to find the right course of action. This discovery has not only caused a rift in my family but has also left me questioning my own decisions, especially my immediate reaction to flee. The dynamics in my family have always been complicated, shaped by long-standing financial strains and personal grievances, and this latest revelation feels like a breaking point. I am reaching out to you, the community, in hopes of gaining some perspective on how others might navigate such a family crisis. How do you balance personal integrity with familial responsibilities, especially when faced with deep-seated issues like betrayal? How can I approach this situation in a way that might help mend the relationships rather than cause further damage? Your insights and advice would be invaluable to me during this difficult time, and I truly appreciate any thoughts you share. Thank you for taking the time to listen about my situation, and for any guidance you can provide.